Chapter 33:13. Su Zimo walked toward the Golden Lotus Peak opposite him. As he approached, his bloodline resonated with the Golden Lotus Peak. Su Zimo paused for a long time. Through the Golden Lotus Peak, an ancient memory entered his mind. Between the 4 Lotus Peaks and the one in the center, there were several dilapidated ancient buildings. Supreme Lin Meng and the others were astounded when they saw the scene. More than 6 billion years had passed and things had changed. Through these dilapidated buildings, one could still vaguely see the shadow of the primal chaos sacred land. Su Zimo didn't stop walking. He walked toward the towering mountain in the center surrounded by the 4 Lotus Peaks. However, as soon as he got close, he felt a strong resistance. He couldn't move forward. Su Zimo didn't force his way in. Instead, he stopped at each of the 4 Lotus Peaks before closing his eyes to cultivate. Su Zimo passed by the 4 Lotus Peaks and obtained 3 pieces of inherited memories. Because he didn't obtain the Black Lotus of Destruction, he didn't inherit the memories of the Black Lotus Peak. However, even these 3 pieces of inherited memories were extremely important to him. Apart from helping him comprehend the great Tao of Chaos faster, these 3 pieces of inherited memories also recorded a formation. 4 lotus seeds fell here, each transforming into a mountain peak. Between the 4 Lotus Peaks, a primal chaos formation was formed. As long as he digested these 3 pieces of inherited memories, he could try to activate this primal chaos formation. According to the inherited memories, once the primal chaos formation was activated, even a saint would find it difficult to break through. Unfortunately, these inherited memories weren't complete. Moreover, they didn't record the origins of the mountain in the center. Supreme Lin Meng and the others didn't disturb Su Zimo when they saw him closing his eyes to cultivate. Instead, they cleaned up the dilapidated buildings and tried their best to restore them to their former appearance. 3 days later, 4 giant ships appeared in the southeastern region of the Greater Thousand World. The 4 ships were clearly imprinted with the insignia of the 4 sacred tribes. Everywhere they passed, all living beings avoided them and kept quiet out of fear. At this moment, there were several supreme experts standing on the ships. They were all from the sacred tribes of the 4 sacred lands. I heard that Su Zimo has quite a few surviving members of the Primal Chaos Holy Land by his side. They even destroyed the 5 Venoms Temple. The person who spoke had his hands clasped behind his back. He was the sovereign of the Yin-Yang sacred land, Changtian. On the next ship, a middle-aged man in a green robe said faintly, "It is said that there are hundreds of Tao masters among these survivors. No one knows where they have been hiding all these years. Until now they have shown themselves." This was the sovereign of the Tianfa Holy Land, Qingyong. "If that wasn't the case, we wouldn't have personally come to resolve this matter," said Nine Shadows, a sovereign of the Void Sacred Land. His voice was like a baby's cry, extremely ear-piercing. Around his body, faint shadows appeared. The sovereign of the Spacetime Sacred Land, Mu Qi, sternly said, "In front of everyone, for members of the sacred race of our 4 sacred lands perished. This debt of blood must be paid with blood." The Supreme Being experts chatted casually with relaxed expressions. Everyone's heart was as clear as a mirror. The surviving members of the Primal Chaos Holy Land and the debt of blood were only secondary. Their primary goal was to seize Qinglian and the Red Lotus of Karmic Fire. They didn't know that the Golden Lotus of Karmic Virtue had become one with Su Zimo. Chang Tian said, "For our 5 sacred lands, the greatest threat is the demons and ghosts of the sacred land of Samsara in the northwest. This can't be a coincidence, can it?" Qin Yong frowned slightly. The northwest has yet to be pacified, and now the surviving members of the Primal Chaos Holy Land have appeared. Will the humans from the Life Sacred Land cause trouble in a few days? "They should be fine," said Nine Shadows. "The humans have been suppressed for the past few years. Their fortunes have waned and they have lost their edge. They no longer dare to contend with our 5 sacred lands." As they chatted, they arrived in front of the Primal Chaos Holy Land. The 4 fortress ships drew the attention of countless Tao sovereigns as they sailed through the skies of the southeastern domain. Every faction realized that something big was about to happen. The experts of the 4 sacred lands have appeared. Haha, the Primal Chaos Holy Land has just recovered. It will probably be destroyed again. It's said that there are hundreds of Tao sovereigns in the Primal Chaos Holy Land. So what? They won't be able to withstand the combined attack of the 4 sacred lands. The Tao sovereigns of the various factions appeared one after another and headed toward the Primal Chaos Holy Land, ready to witness this moment from afar. When the 4 fortress ships arrived, Lin Meng and the others in the Primal Chaos Holy Land were startled awake. "They're here. Is the master still in seclusion? Huayan asked with a frown. Lin Ming said, the master's realm isn't high enough. He can't help in this battle. We can only rely on ourselves. Evergreen Sovereign said in a low voice, we can't fight to the death. If the situation turns bad, we must take the master and flee. Huarua said, let's talk to them first. It'll be best if we can avoid a battle. The 4 sacred clans of the Primal Chaos Holy Land discussed for a while, then stood up and walked to the 4 lotus peaks. The other Dao sovereigns also looked solemn, ready to fight at any time. Lin Meng cupped his fists and said, my name is Lin Meng. May I know the purpose of your visit? Qing Yong sneered. You already know the answer. Evergreen Sovereign raised his voice. More than 6 billion years have passed since that battle. There's no need for you to kill us all, is there? If you want to live, hand over Su Zimo. Muqi said calmly. Lin Ming frowned. The man you speak of is our master, the master of the Primal Chaos Holy Land. Jiaoying shrieked. Hand him over and you'll be the masters of the Primal Chaos Holy Land from now on. There's no need for you to lose your lives for a mere Empyrean. His words caused a stir among the Dao sovereigns of the Primal Chaos Holy Land. Lin Ming shook his head. You jest, fellow Daoist. We'll do our best to protect him since he's our master. The master has no grudge against the 4 sacred lands. Although the 4 sacred clans died at the master's hands during the ancestral Fire Holy Lands Celestial Venerate gathering, that was because they were fighting for the title of Supreme Celestial Venerate. Everyone fought with their own abilities and can't blame others for their deaths. You'll be the laughingstock of the world if you ask for him because of this. The faces of the 4 sacred lands Dao sovereigns darkened when they heard this. There's no need to argue with him. Skyfall waved his hand. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Figures flew out of the 4 ships. The weakest among them were Dao sovereigns, and there were even great sovereigns and supremes. There were nearly 1,000 Dao sovereigns of the 4 sacred lands combined, which was twice as many as the Primal Chaos Holy Land. Skyfall, Qingyong, Jiaoying and Muqi all attacked. Their qi and blood surged as they transformed into their true forms and charged forward with the great Dao. Chapter 33:14. At this moment, one of the lotus peaks behind Supreme Lin Meng and the others rumbled and emitted a dazzling golden light that illuminated the heavens. The golden lotus peak was like a blooming golden lotus, dazzling and eye-catching. Then the second lotus peak shook as well. Azure light filled the air and endless vitality surged. As the 2 lotus peaks shook, a large formation vaguely appeared around the chaotic sacred land. With the 2 lotus peaks as the eye of the formation, countless mysterious runes shone on the formation. All the Dao masters frowned in bewilderment at the sight of this. Everyone retreat to the sacred land and use this formation to defend yourselves. At the same time, Su Zimo's voice sounded. Supreme Lin Meng hesitated for a moment, then led everyone back to the chaotic sacred land. If they fought against Chui Tian, Qingyong and the others, they might be able to hold on for a while, but there would be casualties among them. If they had a large formation to defend themselves, they would be able to adapt to the situation and advance or retreat. When Supreme Lin Meng and the others returned to the chaotic sacred land, the attacks of the Dao sovereigns of the 4 sacred clans descended. Divine weapons condensed from great Daos fell from the sky like rain. Boom, boom, boom. However, these divine weapons couldn't penetrate the chaotic formation at all. When they fell, they exploded with earth-shattering sounds, causing the azure and golden lotus peaks to shake. Supreme Lin Meng and the others stood in the chaotic sacred land. They sighed in relief when they saw that the 4 sacred lands couldn't break through the formation. It seems that this formation was left behind by the sacred leader. The sacred leader really put in a lot of effort to protect our master. Not only did he have the universe creation diagram, but he also has this formation. I wonder how long this formation can last. While everyone was discussing, Su Zimo was still cultivating in one of the lotus peaks. Over the years, he had only controlled 2 of the chaotic formation's eye points. Apart from the Black Lotus Peak, which he couldn't comprehend due to the lack of inheritance memories, there was another Lotus Peak that he hadn't fully comprehended yet. Once he controlled this eye, the chaotic formation's power would increase again. This time it wouldn't just be a passive defense. He could even try to launch a counterattack. Outside the chaotic sacred land, the cultivators of the 4 great holy lands unleashed their qi and blood. They controlled hundreds and thousands of great Daos to continuously attack the great chaos array. However, they were still unable to break through the array's defense. Everyone looked at Su Zimo and the others who were inside, but they couldn't take them down even after a long time. They couldn't help feeling irritated. Jiaoying shrieked, This can't go on. We have to think of a way to break this formation. Difficult. Qin Yong shook his head and said, the vital points of this formation are on the 2 lotus peaks. However, these peaks are indestructible. Not to mention us, even the saints of our clan who came here in the past couldn't take away these 4 lotus peaks. At that moment, the pair of eyes in the sky transformed into yin and yang. 2 beams of divine light shot out and landed on the array of the chaotic sacred land, searching for flaws. After a short while, Skyfall suddenly said, this grand formation hasn't been activated completely. We have to change directions and attack the other 2 formation cores of this formation. Among the 4 lotus peaks, 2 of them seemed to have awakened. The other 2 were completely silent. Skyfall was right. Su Zimo hadn't controlled the formation cores of these 2 lotus peaks yet. They were indeed the weak points of the chaotic grand formation. When the experts of the 4 sacred lands heard this, they immediately circled around the green and gold lotus peaks in front of them and headed towards the red and black lotus peaks. As expected, everyone's attacks landed on the junction between these 2 peaks, causing the chaotic grand formation to shake continuously. The runes on the grand formation also gradually peeled off, and the light flickered. Eternal Green Supreme frowned slightly and said in a low voice, not good. That seems to be the weak point of this grand formation. If they break through it, this grand formation probably won't be able to hold on. Rumble. A loud explosion suddenly erupted. The red lotus peak seemed to be burning. The fire burned brightly. The 3rd formation core was activated. Su Zimo suddenly opened his eyes. With a thought, the aura of the chaotic grand formation suddenly changed. The runes on the grand formation suddenly fell off. As if they had a mind of their own, they transformed into divine weapons and charged into the crowd of the 4 sacred lands. Every formation pattern on the chaotic grand formation was a trace of the Great Tao. These divine weapons were also equivalent to Great Tao weapons. Poof, poof, poof. The Tao masters of the 4 sacred lands were caught off guard. Blood mist instantly spread out from the crowd as they were thrown into chaos by the counterattack of the chaotic grand formation. Clang. One of the divine weapons that blocked the chaotic grand formation roared, everyone be careful. The activation of the 3rd formation core of the chaotic grand formation raised the defense of the grand formation to another level. Although the Black Lotus Peak was still a weakness, the connection established by the 3 lotus peaks was enough to make up for this weakness. Moreover, under the control of Su Zimo, the chaotic grand formation constantly counterattacked and broke the formation of the 4 sacred lands into chaos. Lin Meng, Eternal Green Supreme, and the others were secretly shocked when they saw this scene. Many Tao venerables looked at Su Zimo with less disdain in their eyes. With this chaotic grand formation alone, Su Zimo was invincible in the Tao manipulation realm. Even the sacred race supremes couldn't get close to him, let alone threaten his life. Only the 4 sacred race supremes were able to withstand the counterattack of the chaotic grand formation. The rest had already been defeated and fled into the distance. The Tao masters of the 4 sacred lands did have some tricks up their sleeves. Apart from the chaotic grand formation's first counterattack, which killed 3 Tao masters and 1 supreme sovereign, the rest had been prepared and managed to survive. Now, only the 4 sacred race supremes were left standing in front of the chaotic grand formation. Su Zimo. Jiaoying screamed, come out if you have the guts. What's the point of hiding in there? When Su Zimo heard that, he could not be bothered with him. Lin Ming laughed loudly. You supremes gathered here to deal with a mere great heavenly venerate. Is this what you call a capable person? The way I see it, the 4 sacred lands don't even care about your reputation. Audark Huayan chuckled coldly. The 4 sacred race supremes' faces darkened, but they couldn't do anything to Su Zimo in the chaotic sacred land. Unwilling to give up, the 4 sacred race supremes struggled with the chaotic grand formation for a while longer. In the end, they had no choice but to retreat into the distance and discuss countermeasures. If this continued, they wouldn't be able to hold on before the formation was breached. Su Zimo, I don't believe you'll just hide in there and not come out. Mu Qi clenched his fists and growled. It's fine. Let's continue like this. I'm not in a hurry. Su Zimo's voice sounded nonchalant, but it only made the 4 sacred race supremes gnash their teeth in anger. Su Zimo wasn't in a hurry. At the very least, he wouldn't be leaving the chaotic sacred land for a while. He still needed to absorb the insights of the great Tao of chaos from the 3 lotus peaks. Then, his cultivation would rise another level. End of chapter. Chapter 33:15. With the protection of the Chaos Array, Su Zimo wasn't worried about the experts of the four sacred grounds attacking. He began to cultivate in seclusion, absorbing the insights of the Chaos Great Tao from the three lotus seeds. Before entering seclusion, Su Zimo released all the cultivators in the universe creation diagram. Su Rui Mengshi and the others were filled with emotions when they returned to the Chaos Sacred Land in their lifetime. Supreme Lin Meng, Supreme Evergreen, and the other experts also entered seclusion. Some were even preparing to break through to the Sage Realm. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years passed. The experts of the four sacred grounds waited outside the Chaos Sacred Land for 1,000 years. Later they couldn't take it anymore and retreated. They couldn't keep waiting outside. In the eyes of Heaven Chilling and the others, Su Zimo would appear one day, and they would definitely have a chance in the future. In 1,000 years, Su Zimo had already absorbed and refined all the insights of the Chaos Great Tao from the three lotus seeds. In the Chaos world, the traces of the Great Tao continued to spread, covering every corner and fusing with the world. His cultivation steadily increased. Finally, on this day he advanced another level and broke through to the perfected Tao comprehension realm, becoming a supreme heavenly venerable. The power of his essence spirit also increased, reaching greater mastery of the Tao manipulation realm, comparable to a supreme heavenly venerable. In the ruins of the netherworld Blood Sea. In 1,000 years, Wu Dao's cultivation realm had already risen to the perfected Tao manipulation realm. Qinglian's true body had the inheritance memories of Qinglian in the chaos world, so her cultivation speed was extremely fast. Wu Dao was a Tao technique created by Wu Dao's true body. In terms of cultivation, the speed of his true body was even faster than Qinglian's true body. One more step and he would become a sage. However, just as Wu Dao's true body had expected, as his cultivation realm continued to increase, the repulsive force between the martial universe formed by the three realms and the origin martial world formed by his physical body had reached the limit. His physical body and essence spirit were the origin martial world. If he wanted to merge the Tao, he would have to merge the two worlds. But now the two worlds were like fire and water. Forcefully merging the Tao would only result in death. When he was in the Tao comprehending realm, he could still fuse temporarily. After attaining perfection in the Tao manipulation realm, Wu Dao's main body had attempted to fuse once. However, as soon as the two worlds came into contact, he was heavily injured and almost collapsed. His body and soul were destroyed. After recuperating for several months, he finally recovered. The black-robed man watched the entire process, but he did not say a word, as if he did not see anything. The existence of Wu Dao's true body was an anomaly. The path of Tao unification and becoming a saint was impossible. The road to the great Tao was long, and the future was uncertain. He had to carve out his own path. Wu Dao's true body had been pondering for many years, and his two true bodies were also communicating with each other. Above the virtuous golden lotus, within the inherited memories of the virtuous lotus seed, Wu Dao's true body smelled a trace of an opportunity. The confusion in front of him had begun to see the light. When Su Zimo fused with the virtuous golden lotus, he noticed that there were traces of some kind of fire on it. Within the golden lotus peak of the chaos formation, there was also an extremely ancient aura of fire that was different from the flames he had seen in his cultivation. Even the 12 flames cultivated by Wu Dao's true body could not compare to it. Wu Dao's true body attempted to comprehend the flame. Another 1,000 years passed. Wu Dao's true body did not make any progress towards the mysterious flame. The power contained in the depths of the flame seemed to have far surpassed his current cultivation realm. Wu Dao's true body began to change his train of thought. Furthermore, he borrowed the aura of the mysterious flame to fuse the 12 flames he controlled into one. Finally, on the 3,000th year, he borrowed a wisp of power from the mysterious flame to fuse the 12 flames into one and condense them into a single flame. At that moment, there was only a single flame left in the martial cultivation universe. His cultivation realm was still at the perfected Tao manipulation realm. However, the existence of the flame had already surpassed the Tao manipulation realm and possessed the power of a saint. Wu Dao's true body called it the saint flame of the great Tao. There were many skeletons of saints buried in the ruins. Wu Dao's true body came to the side of a saint skeleton and looked at it intently. Tao integration to become a saint. Even if a saint died, there would still be some great Tao imprints left on his skeleton. This saint cultivated the rain great Tao, which was a branch of the great Tao of water. Wu Dao's true body tried to use the saint flame of the great Tao to burn and refine the great Tao imprints on the saint skeleton. As time passed, the rain great Tao was gradually refined by the saint flame of the great Tao. The birth of the Yuanwu world was an anomaly. It did not enter the cycle of reincarnation, was not in the three realms, and did not have any great Tao. It was originally empty and silent. However, after the saint flame of the great Tao refined the rain great Tao, another great Tao appeared in the Yuanwu world. Wu Dao's true body pondered for a moment and continued to look at another saint's skeleton. What remained of this saint's skeleton was the five elements great Tao. With the help of the saint flame of the great Tao, Wu Dao's true body continued to refine the five elements great Tao. Compared to the rain great Tao, it took much longer to refine the five elements great Tao. After he refined the five elements great Tao, another five elements great Tao would appear in the Yuanwu world. Refining so many great Taos is equivalent to completely giving up on the hope of becoming a saint. Sensing the actions of Wu Dao's true body, the black-robed man suddenly spoke. Just fusing the physical body and primordial spirit with a great Tao was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. It was extremely dangerous. The more great Taos one refined, the harder it was to fuse them. It was like the great Tao of water and the great Tao of fire. The two great Taos opposed each other, and water and fire were incompatible. There was an innate rejection. Wu Dao's true body did not explain anything. Fusing the Tao to become a saint was simply impossible for him. Until now, he still had not thought of the future path. He only vaguely had a general direction and embryonic form in his heart. Wu Dao's true body continued to search for great Taos to refine in the saint skeleton. Chaos Sacred Land. After Su Zimo cultivated to the peak of the Tao comprehending realm, he sensed that the people of the four sacred lands had retreated. He was not in a hurry to leave and continued to cultivate. Time flew. It had been more than 10,000 years since everyone entered the Chaos Sacred Land. Su Zimo had already cultivated to the peak of the Tao comprehending realm, but he was unable to take another step forward and step into the Tao controlling realm. After all, this was a major realm. Unless he obtained the Black Lotus of Destruction or some kind of opportunity, it was very difficult to break through just by cultivating in seclusion. During this period of time in the Chaos Sacred Land, there was a supreme being who tried to fuse the Tao to become a saint, but it ended in failure. Su Zimo watched as the body of a supreme being dissipated bit by bit, turning into powder, fusing into the great Tao and dying. He had long known the dangers of fusing the Tao to become a saint. But it was far less shocking than seeing it with his own eyes. A supreme being died in such a way. Once this step was taken, there was no way out. Once the Tao fused failed, it meant that the body and Tao would disappear and one would die. Since ancient times, many people wanted to fuse the Tao to become a saint and reach eternal life, but in the end they fell in front of eternal life. And this supreme being's failure to break through to the saint realm made the other Tao venerables more cautious. For 10,000 years, no one tried to fuse the Tao. End of chapter. Chapter 33:16. 10,000 years ago, news of Su Zimo leading his people into the Chaos Sacred Land and fending off the experts of the four sacred lands with the help of the Grand Formation had gradually spread throughout the greater 1,000 domains. Over the years, more and more plant and vegetation cultivators and living beings had returned to the continent. The living conditions of the plant race in the southeastern territory were far better than before. The various forces of the 108 states were wary of the Chaos Sacred Land's strength, so they restrained their bullying of the plant race. Some of the more far-sighted races had even predicted that the Chaos Sacred Land would lead an all-encompassing purge and revenge in the southeastern territory. These forces had begun to withdraw from the southeastern territory. In fact, this was exactly what had happened. Over the years, since the experts of the four sacred lands had long since retreated, Lin Meng and the others had begun to discuss how to take back all the 108 states that had been occupied by the alien races. One day, Lin Meng and the others gathered in the Chaos Hall and roughly explained their plan to Su Zimo. Su Zimo smiled and said, "I don't think I have anything to do with this." Lin Meng smiled and said, "My lord, your cultivation isn't high enough. There's no need for you to put yourself in danger. You can just guard the Chaos Sacred Land. If they wanted to expel the alien races from the southeastern territory, they would have to face the top forces of the 108 states. A battle between Tao sovereigns would break out. Su Zimo was only in the perfected Tao comprehending realm, so he naturally couldn't change the situation in front of the Tao sovereigns. Su Zimo smiled and said, "Then I'll leave the matters here to you. I'm going out to find an old friend." "Where are you going, my lord?" Lin Meng asked. "Xianpin Mountain in the southwestern territory." Su Zimo didn't hide anything. He asked, "Have you heard of this place? The southwestern territory?" Evergreen pondered and said, "This place is far from the southwestern territory and the southern region. It's a long journey. Don't run into any danger. It's fine. I can protect myself now. Su Zimo said, there are still flaws in the chaos formation. I'll leave the universe fortune diagram on the Black Lotus Mountain to temporarily replace the formation core. If the 4 great holy lands make a comeback, even without me presiding over it, it would be difficult for them to break through the great primal chaos array. Supreme Huayan frowned slightly. He was about to speak when Supreme Lin Meng suddenly said, the profound valley mountain that Master mentioned seems to be a force established by the human race. It's not just Profound Valley Mountain. The entire southwest region is occupied by humans. The speaker was Mei Liang, a Tao master who had just joined the chaotic sacred land a few years ago. Hearing this, Supreme Lin Meng, Supreme Evergreen, and the others were surprised. Supreme Evergreen said, according to what I know, the human race is a race that was born later on, and their numbers are few. More than 6 billion years ago, although there were many powerful saints in the human clan, most of them died in that turmoil. The Mei Liang holy man shook his head and said, I don't know either. The human race now rules the southwestern region. There are 36 paradises and 72 blessed lands, all of which are occupied by human holy masters. That said, even though the human race is spread throughout the great Kiliacosm, their status and strength are much worse than before. They're about the same as our Plantwood clan. Su Zimo seemed to be deep in thought. According to Supreme Evergreen and Supreme Mei Liang, the human race wasn't considered a large race more than 6 billion years ago. However, after that turmoil, the human race spread throughout the great Kiliacosm. Their status was also much lower than before. Supreme Mei Liang said, maybe it's because the human race has no saints. The human race has no saints? Su Zimo asked. Supreme Mei Liang nodded and said, all these years the human race hasn't produced any saints. For more than 6 billion years the human race had no saints. This was too unusual. No matter how difficult it was to merge with the Tao and become a saint, Su Zimo didn't believe that the human race hadn't produced a single saint in more than 6 billion years. He had similar doubts in the great Kiliacosm. The human race seemed weak, but more than half of the beings who eventually became great emperors were humans. Moreover, the human race was inextricably linked to many other races. For example, although the Heavenly Eye race, the Protoss, and many other races were born with powerful bloodlines and all kinds of innate abilities, they were all in human form. This time he was going to the Southwest Territory to look for Dayu. On the other hand, he might be able to find some answers there. Su Zimo gave a few more instructions before leaving the Chaos Sacred Land and speeding toward the southwest. After reaching perfection in the Tao comprehending realm, Su Zimo's speed had increased by a lot. In less than a month, he had returned to the border between the southeast and the south. At this moment, Su Zimo stopped in his tracks. Not far away he saw a person. Supreme Lin Meng. Su Zimo squinted slightly, a complicated emotion flashing through the depths of his eyes. Then he smiled and asked, Supreme Lin Meng, are you here to see me off? Supreme Lin Meng remained silent. Su Zimo laughed again and said, then you're here to kill me. Hearing this, Supreme Lin Meng's expression changed slightly. He said indifferently, you don't seem surprised? Not really. Su Zimo said. Supreme Lin Meng was a bit confused. He asked, when did I reveal any flaws? No. Su Zimo shook his head and said, you didn't reveal any flaws from the beginning to the end. You were also very respectful to me. Then why did you guess that I was here to kill you? Supreme Lin Meng asked. Su Zimo smiled faintly and said, in the middle realm, there was someone who treated me better than you. He even saved my life. However, his ultimate goal was to refine me. Supreme Lin Meng asked, is that why you were on guard? Of course not. Su Zimo said, when I was young I read some history books. My situation is similar to the situation of a young emperor. The young emperor had just ascended the throne and couldn't suppress the various factions. The generals and ministers under his command were too powerful, and they didn't have much affection for the young emperor. It was easy for them to betray him. That's why I thought that some of you would want to make a move on me and take my place. Supreme Lin Meng nodded and said, actually, the Sacred Master had expected this to happen. That's why he left you the universe fortune diagram and the chaos formation to suppress us. Unfortunately, you left the Chaos Sacred Land and the protection of the chaos formation. You even left the universe fortune diagram in the Sacred Land. After a short pause, Supreme Lin Meng said, I don't understand. If you knew that someone would make a move on you, why did you leave the Chaos Sacred Land? Su Zimo smiled and said, of course I did it on purpose. On purpose? Supreme Lin Meng raised his brows slightly. Su Zimo said, I knew that someone would make a move on me, but I didn't know who it was. If I stayed in the Chaos Sacred Land, you wouldn't have a chance. Since that's the case, I'll create a chance for you. End of chapter. Chapter 33:17. Compared to his experiences in the dimensional realm, Su Zimo's journey to the Greater Thousand Realms had been much smoother. Of course, the Demon Lord, Saint Gu Yao, and even the Primal Chaos Sacred Leader had taken care of him, but Su Zimo didn't dare to be careless. The experts in the Qiankun fortune diagram were far more powerful than him. Even some heavenly venerables weren't willing to submit to him back then. These Dao venerables and supremes had lived for countless years and experienced countless bloodshed. It didn't make sense for them to willingly submit to him just because of his bloodline. Su Zimo turned to look at the nearby forest and said loudly, You've been following me for so long. It's time for you to show yourselves. He had sensed that someone had been following him ever since he left the Primal Chaos Sacred Ground. And it wasn't just one. 3 figures appeared in a flash. They were the Primal Chaos Sacred Ground Supremes Evergreen, Huarua, and Huayan. Including Lin Meng, these 4 were all Sacred Clan members of the Primal Chaos Sacred Ground. Only the Sacred Clan would have such ambition and courage. Are you 3 also here to kill me? Su Zimo asked. Evergreen, Huarua, and Huayan exchanged glances and shook their heads. Lin Meng's expression darkened. Fellow Taoists, are you going to protect him? Huayan frowned. No matter what, he is the sacred leader's successor. It's not appropriate for you to attack him. If Su Zimo could think of this, these 3 old fellows who had lived for hundreds of millions of years could naturally guess as well. When Su Zimo had decided to leave the Primal Chaos Sacred Ground, Evergreen had hinted to him once. When Su Zimo wanted to leave the universe fortune diagram in the Primal Chaos Sacred Ground, Huayan had wanted to remind him as well, but Lin Meng had interrupted him. Therefore, when Su Zimo and Lin Meng left the Primal Chaos Sacred Ground, the 3 Supremes realized something and followed them. Lin Meng said in a low voice, Are the 3 of you counting on him to lead the Primal Chaos Sacred Ground to prominence? He's only in the Tao comprehending realm, and his cultivation is too weak. We're only 1 step away from becoming a saint. Supremacy Evergreen said, Master, his cultivation base isn't slow either. How long do we have to wait? Supreme Lin Meng said, Are the 3 of you willing to be ordered around by a mere heavenly venerable? You want to suppress us with just a bloodline? Paragon Huarua suddenly said, Big brother Lin Meng, you want to make a move against him because of your own selfishness, right? Not bad. There was no way this matter could be hidden from Supremacy Evergreen and the others. Supremacy Lin Meng didn't try to hide it either and directly admitted it. Lin Meng said, Do you know how dangerous it is to become a saint? We watched as Puing died, but we couldn't do anything about it. I didn't have the confidence to complete the Tao fusing, so I didn't have the courage to take that step. I cultivate the creation Great Tao. If I can obtain his creation, Qinglian, my chances of reaching the Tao integration stage will increase. Supremacy Lin Meng took a deep breath and said in a low voice, Fellow Taoists, I only have one question. Our friendship over so many years can't compare to an outsider who came out of nowhere? Supremacy Evergreen and the others had complicated expressions on their faces as they remained silent. They had cultivated together back in the Primal Chaos Sacred Land and experienced countless dangers together. Later on, they had been trapped in the universe creation diagram for more than 6 billion years. They had sat down and discussed the Tao, drank to their heart's content and chatted happily. No one else could compare to this kind of relationship. Supremacy Lin Meng said, If you don't care about our friendship over the years and come to kill me, I won't fight back. I won't fight back. Since Supremacy Lin Meng had said this, Supremacy Evergreen and the others instantly fell into a dilemma. They naturally couldn't attack Supremacy Lin Meng, let alone kill him. However, Su Zimo was the successor of the sacred leader. Although they didn't have a deep relationship with him, he was still their master in name. They were indeed unconvinced by Su Zimo and even looked down on him. However, they had never thought of killing their master and replacing him. Right at that moment, Su Zimo spoke. The 3 of you don't have to be troubled. Since Supremacy Lin Meng wants to kill me, this is a matter between us. The 3 of you can choose not to help either side and stay out of it. No matter who lives or dies, it has nothing to do with the 3 of you. Supremacy Evergreen and the others heaved a sigh of relief when they heard that. Su Zimo's magnanimity relieved the 3 of them, but they also felt guilty. If the 3 of them chose to stay out of it, it would seem like they were not helping either side. However, in reality, it was equivalent to watching Su Zimo die in the hands of Supremacy Lin Meng. After all, the difference between them was too great. They were an entire major cultivation realm apart. No amount of talent or bloodline could make up for such a huge difference. Master, you can turn around and run later. Supreme Huarua couldn't bear it in his heart and sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness. I can help you stall them for a moment. As for the future, Su Zimo did not reply and merely shook his head. Supremacy Evergreen and the others sighed and took a step back one after another. At the sight of that, Supremacy Lin Meng finally relaxed and turned to Su Zimo. Don't worry, after you die, I'll definitely lead the Chaos Sacred Land to rise again and return to its former glory. Even if you die, you can rest in peace. Su Zimo chuckled. The reason why you followed me here before making a move is because this place is deserted. After killing me, you can push my death to other factions. You can use this as a reason to rise to the top and gather reputation in people's hearts in the name of revenge to lead the Chaos Sacred Land. That's right. Supremacy Lin Meng nodded. Naturally, he had already deduced all the subsequent plans in his heart countless times. Very good. Su Zimo clapped and smiled. Now there's only one problem left. What? I don't want to die. That's not up to you. The two's gazes clashed in the air. Their swords were already drawn in just a few words. Even now, Su Zimo remained calm and asked with a smile, Do you know why I've never made a move in front of you? Supremacy Lin Meng smiled and said, Since you're prepared, you must be hiding your trump cards. Then, Supremacy Lin Meng changed the topic and said, But before today, I've already asked around carefully. You have the strength to kill those above your level with Qinglian's bloodline. Your nascent spirit has even reached the level of Supreme Monarchs. Your strongest trump card is the 2 divine swords that kill upon contact with blood. How did you know that? Su Zimo asked. Supremacy Lin Meng said, You're very smart, but you're still too young. Know yourself and know your enemy and plan before you act. I haven't lived my life for nothing. I won't underestimate anyone, even someone as weak as you. With my capabilities, your divine swords won't be able to touch me at all. Su Zimo nodded. As a matter of fact, Supremacy Lin Meng was right. With Su Zimo's current capabilities, he wouldn't stand a chance in a fair fight. Today was the 14th of February. It would be a little difficult for him to run all the way to Xianmi Mountain to celebrate the festival with Daiyu. Sigh, I can only hope that my fellow cultivators won't be able to celebrate Valentine's Day. End of chapter. Chapter 33:18. The two of them faced each other. The blood chi in Su Zimo's body surged, supporting a world. 2 sword lights tore through the chaos and landed in his palms. They were the Avicii and Netherworld swords. Supremacy Lin Meng watched this scene calmly with a calm expression. He knew all of Su Zimo's methods. Right then, 2 balls of purple flames suddenly rose in Su Zimo's eyes and his aura changed drastically as well. Supreme Lin Meng frowned. Su Zimo was still at the perfected Tao comprehension realm. However, for some reason, he felt his hair stand on end when he was stared at by the 2 purple flames in Su Zimo's eyes. It was as though there were no secrets on him at all. What was going on? The Su Zimo in front of him seemed to have changed into a different person. Supreme Lin Meng took a deep breath and calmed himself down. No matter what, there was still a huge difference in their cultivation realms. He did not believe that a Tao comprehension realm supreme could hurt him. Supreme Lin Meng waved his hand gently and the creation Great Tao rapidly condensed into a long saber that slashed down towards Su Zimo's head. At the perfected Tao manipulation realm, one had already mastered the Great Tao. Su Zimo's eyes burned with purple flames as he stared at the Great Tao saber that was slashing down. He waved his sword and slashed at the saber in a seemingly casual manner. Clang. There was a crisp sound. The Great Tao saber broke with the sound. Supreme Lin Meng's expression changed. How was that possible? No matter how sharp the 2 divine swords in Su Zimo's hands were, it was impossible for them to break his Great Tao weapon without sufficient strength. Even Supreme Evergreen and the other 2 revealed looks of bewilderment when they saw this scene. Supreme Lin Meng was a sacred race cultivator at the perfected Tao manipulation realm. Su Zimo was only relying on the strength of a supreme heavenly venerable. Even if he had a divine weapon, it was impossible for him to shake the Great Tao of a supreme. Su Zimo wielded 2 swords and walked towards Supreme Lin Meng with a cold expression. Supreme Lin Meng hurriedly waved his hands and conjured the Great Tao. Many divine weapons condensed in midair and slashed towards Su Zimo. Clang clang clang. A series of metallic sounds rang out. Su Zimo waved his Avicii and Netherworld swords. He didn't use any techniques, but he managed to slice apart all the great Tao divine weapons, turning them into nothingness. A hint of panic flashed across Supreme Lin Meng's eyes for the first time. Such a situation had completely exceeded his expectations and imagination. Supreme Evergreen and the other two were also watching with rapt attention. Master, it seems that you didn't use brute force to break the divine weapon of the Great Path. As a bystander, Eternal Green Supreme Martial Artist could see everything clearly, and he could vaguely see a trace of something. He said, "Look carefully, the places where my Lord's sword strikes seem to be the weakest parts of the Great Tao divine weapon." Supreme Hua Rua and Supreme Huayan nodded as well. But in next to no time Autarch Huayan frowned and said, "How is that possible? Unless you've already completely comprehended the Great Tao of creation. Otherwise, how could you find the flaw of a Great Tao weapon in an instant?" There was only one possibility for such a strange situation to occur. Su Zimo's mastery and comprehension of the Great Tao of creation was above Supreme Lin Meng's. But in reality Su Zimo cultivated the Great Tao of chaos and not the Great Tao of creation. Moreover, he was only at the perfected Tao comprehension realm and had yet to reach the Tao manipulation realm. It was even more impossible for him to control the Great Tao of creation. The distance between the two of them was constantly closing. Su Zimo walked over confidently with his Avicii and Netherworld swords in hand and easily dispelled Supreme Lin Meng's attack. "That's impossible." Supreme Lin Meng's mind was in a mess as he exclaimed, "Do you know why I cultivated in the Chaos Sacred Land for 10,000 years? Su Zimo asked indifferently. This sentence made Supreme Lin Meng even more confused. Cultivating in seclusion was obviously for cultivation. Could there be other reasons? In reality, Su Zimo had already cultivated to the perfected Tao comprehension realm long ago. However, he wasn't in a hurry to leave. Instead, he continued to stay in the Chaos Sacred Land. His main goal wasn't Qinglian's true body, but Wu Dao's true body. He wanted to find Dai Yu as soon as possible. He couldn't stay in the Chaos Sacred Land forever. However, as long as he left, he might encounter danger. Even if he had the universe creation diagram with him, he could only preserve his life. If Supreme Lin Meng found him, he would be trapped in there forever. Therefore, in the past 10,000 years, Wu Dao's true body had been refining several great Daos with the help of the Great Tao Sacred Fire in the Nether Blood Sea. Not only was there the Great Tao of creation, but there were also the Great Daos that Supreme Evergreen and the others cultivated. When the Spirit Potency art was released, with the help of Wu Dao's true body's purple eyes burning with the Great Tao Sacred Fire, the Great Tao weapons released by Supreme Lin Meng had no secrets at all. At this moment, Su Zimo could clearly see the veins of the Great Tao of creation and find the weakest point. With the help of the Avicii and Netherworld swords, he broke it in one strike. If Wu Dao's true body didn't successfully refine the Great Tao, Qinglian's true body wouldn't be able to break it even with the help of the Avicii and Netherworld swords. Naturally, Su Zimo wouldn't explain this to Supreme Lin Meng. Supreme Lin Meng watched as his attacks were neutralized one by one, and Su Zimo was getting closer and closer. He became more and more flustered. When he looked into the eyes burning with purple flames, he even felt a burning pain in his eyes. Supreme Lin Meng didn't dare to release his blood chi to take on the Avicii and Netherworld swords head-on. He hurriedly retreated and put some distance between them. "You've lost." Su Zimo stood where he was and didn't chase after him. He only said this calmly. Supreme Lin Meng's body shook when he heard this. His face suddenly turned pale as if he had suffered a huge blow. Even his expression became a little dazed. Su Zimo put away his swords and stood there, quietly looking at Supreme Lin Meng in the distance. Right now he wasn't able to kill Lin Meng for good. If Supreme Lin Meng turned around and fled, he wouldn't be able to catch up at all. However, this exchange was enough to intimidate Supreme Lin Meng so that he wouldn't dare to act recklessly in the future. I've lost. Supreme Lin Meng looked at Su Zimo and murmured softly. Countless thoughts flashed across his mind. How could this be? Could it be that the sacred leader had possessed me and was giving me a warning? Supreme Lin Meng glanced at Supreme Evergreen and the other two not far away. Meanwhile, the 3 Nine Heavens Supremes were looking at him with complicated looks. Their gazes were a little dazzling. Supreme Lin Meng subconsciously avoided them. After today's incident, Supreme Lin Meng had even used their friendship of many years to stop them from attacking. However, he was still defeated by Su Zimo. How were they going to get along with each other in the future? How was he going to stay in the Chaos Sacred Land in the future? How was he going to face Su Zimo in the future? Shame, regret, fear, confusion. In that instant, all sorts of emotions welled up in Lin Meng's heart, and the thought of committing suicide flashed through his mind. After a moment of silence, his eyes flickered with a hint of determination. He had decided to take that step. Dao merging. A terrifying force suddenly burst out from Supreme Lin Meng's body. Don't. Big Brother Lin Meng. Supreme Evergreen and the others blurted out. They tried to stop him. Trying to merge with the Dao under such circumstances was no different from committing suicide after suffering such a great blow. However, they soon saw a relieved and apologetic look in Supreme Lin Meng's eyes. It was Supreme Lin Meng's choice. This was the only path left for him. Following a great shudder, Supreme Lin Meng's body calmed down once again. Under the crowd's gaze, his flesh and blood turned into dust as he died. Chapter 33:19. Supreme Evergreen and the other two couldn't help but sigh deeply upon seeing this. Even though they had lived for billions of years and were used to seeing death, they still felt a little sad when they saw Supreme Lin Meng reach this stage. Supreme Evergreen and the other two turned to look at Su Zimo. At this moment, the purple flames in Su Zimo's eyes had gradually faded and returned to normal. The oppressive feeling that he gave the three supreme martial artists seemed to have disappeared as well. The three supreme martial artists looked at each other and went forward one after another. They knelt down and said in a deep voice, "My lord, we have sinned, rise." Before the three supremes could finish, Su Zimo waved his sleeves and gestured for them to rise. Although the three supremes chose not to help either side, they were actually on Supreme Lin Meng's side and tacitly agreed that he would kill Su Zimo and replace him. However, he didn't succeed in the end. Su Zimo said, "It's difficult to be loyal and righteous at the same time. This matter is difficult to choose. You are all people who value friendship and righteousness. What are you guilty of?" Supreme Evergreen and the other two stood up and thanked him. Su Zimo gave them a few more words of advice before leaving. He sped toward the southwest, riding the wind and drinking the dew. He encountered some obstacles along the way, but they were all daunting but not dangerous. After crossing the southern region, Su Zimo finally set foot in the southwestern region. There was an extremely obvious border between the two regions. In the southern domain it was scorching hot. Scorched earth was everywhere and even vegetation was rare. However, in the southwest territory, it was lush green and full of vitality. Between the lingering immortal mist, rainbows flew, and it was like a fairyland. Su Zimo came to a small town and bought a map of the southwestern region from a cultivator. He found the direction of Xianmi Mountain and set off again. About half a month later, Su Zimo finally arrived at his destination. As soon as he arrived near Xianmi Mountain, Su Zimo could feel that this place was different from the others. Along the way, he passed by 36 heavenly caves and 72 blessed lands. The heavenly caves and blessed lands here were similar to the 108 prefectures in the southeastern region and the 49 blessed lands in the southern domain. They were all occupied by powerful cultivators. These experts were high and mighty. They resided at the peak of immortal mountains, far away from the mortal world. But in the vicinity of Xianmi Mountain, Su Zimo unexpectedly saw villages after villages. The houses were upright, the roads were crisscrossed, chickens and dogs were chirping, men plowing and women weaving, happy and contented. Su Zimo stood there in silence for a long time. Suddenly, he felt as if he had returned to the mortal world and was looking at scenes he had not seen in a long time. The men and women among them had different levels of cultivation. Some of them did not even cultivate and looked like mortals. But even powerful cultivators didn't act arrogantly when facing cultivators of lower cultivation. They didn't act arrogantly and bossily, and they didn't use their strength to bully the weak. In this village there was no bloodshed. Instead there was a sense of peace. Surrounded by the immortal mountains and cave abodes of the 36 heavenly caves and 72 blessed lands, this village seemed like a paradise that was far away from the hustle and bustle of the world. This is Xianmi Mountain? If not for the fact that he knew that he was in the Great Thousand World, Su Zimo would have thought that he had returned to a village under Pingyang Town. Su Zimo took a deep breath and walked towards the village ahead. In the distance, someone was sitting quietly like a rock in a straw raincoat. He was fishing by the stream without moving at all. In the forest, a woodcutter was waving his axe and chopping down trees. He was sweating profusely and there were already many branches piled up under his feet. In fact, Su Zimo did not even want to break the peace and tranquility. He merely walked along the path in the fields with much lighter footsteps. A few children were playing and chasing each other. One of the children did not look where he was going and ran in front of Su Zimo. He bumped into him and was a little dizzy. "Are you all right?" Su Zimo asked. "It's fine." The child bowed hurriedly. Sorry. Su Zimo smiled. When the child saw Su Zimo's smile, he turned around and played with the other children. In the fields beside the path, a middle-aged farmer who was farming saw this scene and nodded to Su Zimo with an apologetic smile. The child who bumped into Su Zimo earlier had a similar appearance to the middle-aged farmer. Su Zimo nodded as well. Along the way, the people in the village did not show any hostility or wariness when they saw him as an outsider. Instead, they smiled kindly. Smoke curled above a house and the door was wide open. Through the window, one could see the smoke lingering inside. A burly man with bare arms could be seen vaguely. Su Zimo smelled a fragrance. It was not the fragrance of elixirs, but a delicacy cooked with the simplest ingredients in the world. The smell of smoke and fire that came from the mortal world made him feel inexplicably touched. "It's time to eat. Brat, come back and eat." The burly man's rough voice came from the house. This voice also made Su Zimo come to his senses. Not far away, a child who was playing left his friends and skipped over. His stomach was growling and his face was full of joy. "Excuse me, is this Shenmi Mountain?" The child ran past Su Zimo and asked subconsciously. The child turned around and asked, "Are you also here to learn from the Mountain Elder?" "Mountain Elder?" Su Zimo was stunned. The child stretched out 2 fingers and pulled down the corners of his eyes. He made a funny face and said, "The Mountain Elder lives at the foot of the mountain over there. He's an old grandpa with a long face. You can recognize him at a glance." The burly man in the house had just finished cooking. When he heard the commotion outside, he wiped the grease off his hands with a rag and shouted, "Little brother, do you want to come in and eat together?" Su Zimo was stunned for a moment before smiling. "Thank you for your kind intentions, brother. I'm Su Zimo and I'm busy so I can't disturb you. You're here to look for someone, right?" the burly man asked. Before Su Zimo could reply, the burly man pointed in a direction into the distance. "Go over there and look for her." Su Zimo was surprised and delighted. The burly man knew of his intentions. However, he did not know if the burly man was pointing in the direction of the Mountain Elder or Daiyu. Before Su Zimo could continue asking, the burly man had already brought the child into the house and was chowing down at the table. Su Zimo was a little uneasy, but he still headed in that direction. He had only taken a few steps when his heart skipped a beat and he snapped back to his senses. Along the way, there were a few people whose cultivation realms should have already reached the perfected Tao manipulation realm and were supreme venerables. There were fishermen fishing by the stream, woodcutters cutting wood in the forest, farmers farming in the fields, and even that burly man earlier on. However, those people had already blended into their surroundings. At first glance, one would only think of them as ordinary fishermen and woodcutters. In deep thought, Su Zimo did not stop in his tracks. Before long, a faint fragrance drifted over from the front that was familiar. It was the fragrance of peach blossoms. Su Zimo raised his head. Not far away there were peach blossom trees at the foot of the mountain. At that moment, the peach blossoms were in full bloom and countless butterflies were dancing between the flowers. A blood-robed woman leaned against the peach blossom tree with her body hanging in the air. Her slender legs were casually draped over the branches and she was resting with her eyes closed. Her black hair was like a waterfall that scattered over her shoulders and her expression was lazy and beautiful. The human-faced peach blossoms were surrounded by butterflies. Everyone, happy Lantern Festival and reunited. End of chapter. Chapter 33:20. Su Zimo looked at the blood-robed woman and felt his heart skip a beat. He was in a daze and did not know if this person was real or an illusion. The two of them had been separated for more than 80,000 years. It was different from when Daiyu transformed into a butterfly in Pingyang town. This time, the two of them were separated by life and death in the middle world. In fact, Su Zimo did not even know if he would be able to see Daiyu again after ascending to the greater world. What would Daiyu be like when they met again? It was only at this moment that he realized that Daiyu was still the person he thought about day and night. In fact, she was even younger than before. There was a hint of youthfulness on her carefree and lazy face. Su Zimo had witnessed Daiyu die in front of him with his own eyes. That despair, helplessness and pain made him feel so miserable that he wanted to die. He was far away from his hometown and traveled the 3,000 worlds alone to relieve the pain in his heart. However, it was still difficult for him to escape. Just now, when he saw Daiyu, all the pain and agony vanished into thin air. There was only endless joy left in his heart. Su Zimo's eyes reddened and he could not bear to look away. He merely looked at Daiyu in a daze and could not even bear to disturb her. After an unknown period of time, suddenly the blood-robed woman harumphed softly and said, You've been staring at me for a long time. How rude. As she said that, the blood-robed woman opened her eyes and looked in Su Zimo's direction. When the blood-robed woman saw Su Zimo's expression, she pursed her lips and a smile appeared in her beautiful eyes. You're an interesting person. Why are you so aggrieved and your eyes reddened after a single sentence from me? Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he felt a sense of uneasiness. He hurried forward and arrived under the peach blossom tree, asking with a trembling voice, Daiyu, don't you recognize me? Why should I recognize you? The blood-robed woman stared at Su Zimo for a moment and shook her head. When Su Zimo saw that Daiyu did not seem like she was joking with him, he could not help but shudder and his face turned incomparably pale. The words of the demonic emperor appeared in his mind. She was reborn in the great thousand world, not reborn. The so-called new life means that all traces of this life will be erased. When she is reborn in the greater thousand realms, she can become any one of the myriad races. She will also forget everything in this life, including you. In the end, the evil emperor was right. The two of them met again, but they didn't know each other. Su Zimo's heart ached. Most of the joy he had felt earlier had been washed away. Right at this moment, the blood-robed woman continued, Moreover, my name isn't Daiyu, it's Su Dai. Stunned, Su Zimo asked, Why is your surname Su? Who gave you this name? I picked it myself. The blood-robed woman's eyes flashed with pride when she mentioned this. She said, I was raised by a bunch of butterflies. The first word I spoke was Su, and the first word I recognized was Su. I'm guessing that I must have been an extraordinary person in my previous life. Su is so important to me, so it should be my surname. Before the blood-robed woman could finish her sentence, she saw that Su Zimo's eyes were red and tears were streaming down his face. After the reincarnation cycle, Daiyu had almost forgotten everything about her previous life, including herself. However, she did not forget him. On the peach blossom tree, the blood-robed woman looked down at Su Zimo, who was crying his eyes out. Her heart skipped a beat and she felt a pang of heartache for no reason. The blood-robed woman closed her eyes and remained silent for a long time. Suddenly she floated down and arrived before Su Zimo. She asked gently, What's your name? My name is Su Zimo. Su Zimo's eyes were red from crying as he replied softly. The blood-robed woman seemed to reply casually. Su Zimo wiped away the tears on his face and took a deep breath. Miss Dai, I want to tell you a story. Are you willing to listen? That depends on whether your story is good or not. The blood-robed woman smiled gently. Su Zimo nodded and tried his best to compose himself. With a reminiscing expression he said softly, There's a small town in Tianhuang mainland called Pingyang Town. There was a scholar in the small town who had a house of his own. There was a peach blossom tree like this in his courtyard as well. As he spoke, Su Zimo pointed to the peach blossom tree at the side. No matter what, Daiyu still remembered something. If not for that, she would not have planted those peach blossom trees near her residence. Su Zimo believed that his time in Pingyang Town had left a deep impression in Daiyu's heart. He hoped that he could use that to awaken Daiyu's memories of her previous life. Su Zimo continued, The scholar's daily life was nothing out of the ordinary. It was nothing more than reading and writing. Until one day he went out and met a red-robed lady who was severely injured and unconscious. He saved her. Su Zimo recounted how they first met, how Daiyu left him with 3 gifts and how he chased after Daiyu's footsteps to the middle world where they finally met. The two of them fought against the heavens together and destroyed the heavenly palaces before Daiyu died in the hands of the Nirvana Ghost Mother. It was an extremely long story. Su Zimo was immersed in his memories and unknowingly, he had already spoken for 3 days and 3 nights. He did not realize that even after such a long time, the blood-robed woman did not reveal any hint of impatience on her face. She listened to him quietly without interrupting at all. Instead, when he talked about his feelings, a hint of gentleness would flash through the eyes of the blood-robed woman when she looked at him. After the entire story, Su Zimo finally snapped out of his daze and heaved a sigh of relief. It's a fascinating story, the blood-robed woman smiled calmly. Are you trying to say that the scholar in the story is you and the red-robed woman is my previous life? You don't believe me? Su Zimo did not expect that it would be useless even after telling her everything about his previous life. He could not help but feel anxious. His heart skipped a beat as he hurriedly took out a painting from his storage bag and unfurled it in front of the blood-robed woman. There were 2 people drawn on the painting, a man and a woman. The man had black hair and green robes. His eyes were like torches, he was Su Zimo. The woman's blood-red robes reached the ground and she looked down at the world. She was Daiyu. This was a painting given to Su Zimo by the painting immortal Mo Qing before he ascended. Miss Dai, look. Su Zimo pointed at the two people in the painting and said, "This is a painting given to me by an old friend in the middle world. Aren't the people in the painting us?" The blood-robed woman glanced at the painting and her gaze landed on a line of words at the bottom right corner of the painting. She read it softly, "I hope that junior brother Su can find her soon and live together for the rest of his life." The blood-robed woman looked at the line of words and smelled the faint fragrance from the painting. Suddenly she asked, "This was given to you by a woman, right?" "Yes." Su Zimo nodded instinctively. "The painting immortal of Jianghu Academy, senior sister Mo Qing. Why haven't I heard you mention this senior sister Mo Qing before?" The blood-robed woman glared at Su Zimo and asked with a fake smile. Su Zimo was stumped for a moment. In his story earlier on he was mostly talking about his longing for Daiyu. Naturally he would save as much as he could. All of a sudden, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he snapped back to his senses and looked at Daiyu in disbelief. He was emotional and could not care less as he grabbed Daiyu's hands and asked with a trembling voice, "You've remembered, haven't you?" Daiyu's face flushed red but she did not break free. She looked at Su Zimo with a tender gaze and nodded gently. Su Zimo's heart almost exploded as his blood boiled. He asked hurriedly, "When?" "Just when you were crying." Daiyu pursed her lips and smiled. Su Zimo blushed shyly. However, he was incomparably happy. When he was crying he hadn't finished telling the story yet. Su Zimo said, "Why didn't you say so earlier?" "You made me," Daiyu said gently. "We haven't seen each other for a long time. I want to hear you talk to me. Even 3 days and 3 nights wouldn't be enough." Su Zimo's heart warmed when he heard that. He wrapped his arms around Daiyu and pulled her into his embrace. The two of them could feel each other's heartbeats as they hugged each other tightly. They were almost using all their strength, as though they were afraid that the other party would leave them again. This time around, the two of them knew that no one would be able to separate them. There were more words in this chapter. End of chapter. Chapter 33:21. Near the village at the foot of Xianping Mountain, a fisherman who was fishing seemed to have sensed something. He opened his eyes and glanced over, smiling knowingly. The woodcutter who was chopping firewood took a breather and turned around as well. When he saw the two people hugging under the peach blossom tree, the woodcutter grinned and continued chopping firewood with his axe. The farmer who was plowing stopped his hoe and stood up to look over. An honest smile appeared on his slightly withered face as well. In front of a straw hut at the foot of the mountain, an old man in a loose white robe reclined on a rocking chair. An opened book covered his face and his white beard was being tugged by a few children beside him. The children were tugging on the old man's beard and swinging it, letting out a series of giggles. They were having so much fun that the old man was not annoyed at all. One of the children stepped on the rocking chair and tugged on the old man's beard, clumsily climbing into the old man's embrace and standing on it. That child had sharp eyes and caught sight of a man and woman under a peach blossom tree in the distance. He could not help but widen his eyes and ask, "Grandpa Mountain Elder, who's hugging Sister Dai?" The old man in white robes did not move at all, nor did he lift the book on his face. Instead he said, "That's your Sister Dai's Dao companion and a great hero of the human race." When they heard that, many of the children were excited and scrambled to climb onto the old man, shouting, "Grandpa Mountain Elder, hurry and tell us a story. We want to hear the story of this great hero." Fufu. The old man in white robes chuckled. "I'm going to take an afternoon nap. Someone will tell you guys a story in the future." "Who will tell us a story?" "Grandpa Mountain Elder, you're lying." The group of children chattered noisily. The old man in white robes said, "In the future, if you guys see a pale-faced, beardless and slightly plump wandering Taoist at the entrance of the village, just grab him." "How long do we have to wait?" The children pressed relentlessly. Soon. The moment the old man in white robes said that, a soft snore could be heard within a breath. The children who were still making a ruckus earlier on kept quiet when they saw that the old man in white robes had fallen asleep. They climbed down softly and dispersed. After a long time, the man and woman under the peach tree reluctantly separated, but their hands were still holding each other's. The two of them sat side by side on a bench under the peach tree, telling each other about their love affairs. Only when Su Zimo was with Daiyu would he completely relax and ignore the commotion outside. It was as if the two of them were the only ones left in the world. At the same time, Su Zimo could sense that Daiyu seemed to have changed slightly after her rebirth. In her expression and words, there was less of the coldness that kept people 1,000 miles away, and more of the shyness of a young girl, which made her seem even more moving. This time, Dai was no longer a member of the butterfly clan but a human. However, there were still many butterflies around her. Su Zimo asked, "After you were reborn, were you at Shenmi Mountain?" Dai shook her head and said, "I was reborn in the northwest territory of the Great Thousand World. There were frequent wars there. Fortunately, there were many butterflies taking care of me, so I was not affected by the flames of war and gradually grew up. When I was 10 years old, a woman in white found me and sent me here." A woman in white. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Dai said, "She did not mention her identity before. Now that I have recovered the memories of my previous life, I know that she is the evil emperor, the current evil lord of the Great Thousand World." Back then, the evil lord was just a little girl in the middle world, mainly because she was injured and her realm was suppressed, so she did not recover to her peak. Su Zimo nodded. It was the same for the Brahma Ghost Mother and the Demon Lord back then. When the great calamity of killing Wu Dao's original body broke the barrier of the three realms, the Brahma Ghost Mother recovered her cultivation and was no longer old. "Why did the evil lord send you here?" Su Zimo asked. Dai said, "She did not say in detail. She only said that the Northwest was chaotic and she could not take care of me, so she brought me here." Northwest. Su Zimo was deep in thought. The original reincarnation sacred ground was in the Northwest Territory. Dai said, "The Northwest Territory was originally ruled by the heavenly human tribe, with a total of 33 heavens. After the Demon Lord, Evil Lord, Brahma Ghost Mother, and Lord of Hell ascended, they fought the 33 heavenly palaces of the Northwest Territory, causing countless casualties. 50,000 years ago, the 5 sacred grounds came to the Northwest Territory to help the 33 heavenly palaces suppress the Demon Lord, Evil Lord, Brahma Ghost Mother, and Lord of Hell. In the end, the situation escalated and led to a war between the sages. Both sides had great sages. The 5 sacred grounds suffered many casualties and many sages fell. War between the sages. Great sages attacked. Sages fell. It was not hard to imagine the tragedy of the war in the Northwest Territory. What happened after that? Su Zimo asked. Dai said, "The 5 sacred grounds could not take down the 4 heavens, so their experts temporarily withdrew from the 33 heavens. Both sides recuperated and did not do much during this period. The Demon Lord and Evil Lord were so strong that they could withstand the siege of the 5 sacred grounds?" Su Zimo was surprised. If the reincarnation sacred ground was so strong, it would not have been destroyed in the past. Moreover, the reincarnation sacred ground was already destroyed in this life. Only the Ashura, Ghost Path, Beast Path and Hell Path were left. Dai shook her head and said, "The Devil Lord, the Evil Lord, the Brahma Ghost Mother, and the Lord of Hell should have already become great sages. However, I don't know why the 4 of them could withstand the attacks of the 5 great sacred grounds." Su Zimo suddenly remembered that Uncle Feng had mentioned something when he was in the ancestral fire sacred ground. The Vermilion Heaven Master was in seclusion to recover from his injuries. Now that he thought about it, the Vermilion Heaven Master's injuries were most likely from the 33 heavens battlefield. When he returned in this life, the 4 sacred grounds had become great sages. Su Zimo did not care about the Demon Lord, Evil Lord or even the Lord of Hell. However, the Brahma Ghost Mother had become a great sage. This meant that the difficulty of taking revenge on her had increased by several times. At the same time, Su Zimo also understood something. More than 6 billion years ago, why did the sacred grounds send their sages to the middle world to build the heavenly court and seal the middle world? It was because the 4 sacred grounds were too strong and would cause endless trouble. Only the sages had endless lifespan and could seal the 4 sacred grounds in the middle world forever, preventing them from ascending to the greater world. In this life, if not for the appearance of Wu Dao's original body, the 4 sacred grounds would not have had the chance to break through the heavenly court seal. Did the human race participate in that battle? Su Zimo asked. Dai shook her head and said, "That battle eventually escalated to the level of a battle between sages. The human race had no sages. They would have died in vain if they went." Hearing that the human race had no sages, Su Zimo could not help but ask, "Why do the human race have no sages?" Thank you to Qinggu Hongmeng for 10,000 book coins and Qingshan Yueming for 15,000 book coins. End of chapter. Chapter 33-22. Dai's eyes flashed coldly at the mention of this. She said, "Under the suppression of the Tianfa Holy Land, not only the human race but also the plant race. Even if someone becomes a saint, they will be punished by Tianfa. As expected. Previously, Su Zimo had thought that the so-called heavenly punishment that Uncle Feng mentioned might have something to do with the heavenly punishment sacred ground. Su Zimo said, "A Tao Lord of the ancestral fire sacred ground once told me that saints would be tainted by karma and be punished by the heavens for killing living beings below the saint realm. Now it seems like it's not that simple. If Tianfa was not the rule of heaven and earth but was controlled by someone or a force, there would be too many variables. Tianfa's existence was no longer fair. It was entirely possible for someone to control Tianfa and kill others out of selfishness." Daiyu said, "This rule was made by the Tianfa Holy Land after the turmoil more than 6 billion years ago. This rule seems fair and protects the weak from being killed by the saints, but in fact, it is a method used by the Tianfa Holy Land to intimidate the other races. If any saint disobeys the Tianfa Holy Land, the Tianfa Holy Land will use this rule as an excuse to send down heavenly punishment and kill the saint. As long as one becomes a saint, whose hands are not tainted by karma. Over the years, the Tianfa Holy Land has used this as an excuse to kill all the saints of the human race. Over time, no one dares to try for the saint realm. As the Great Path Saint position is occupied by the saints of other races, the chances of humans becoming saints become fewer and fewer." Great Path Saint position? Su Zimo was confused. Daiyu explained, "Once you step into the saint realm is the Tao. If someone occupies a great path, no one else can become a saint on this great path." Su Zimo was enlightened. The saint realm was the Tao and the Tao was the saint. Take the great path of chaos for example. If he became a chaotic saint, it would be impossible for others to integrate the great path of chaos. Because he was the great path of chaos, how could others integrate with him? There were 3,000 great paths but there were limited numbers. The more saints there were, the fewer paths others had to take to become saints. Therefore, after ascending to the Great Thousand World, the step of path manifestation was extremely important. If one wanted to become a saint and condense a Tao seal, one could not have a saint. Otherwise, as long as the saint of this great Tao did not die, the living being who condensed this great Tao would never have any hope of becoming a saint. Daiyu said, "However, the situation in the Great Thousand World has changed over the years. In the war between the 5 great holy lands and the 4 Taos in the 33 heavens, some of their saints perished, causing some of the great Tao sages to become vacant. All the paragons who have a chance to break through to the saint realm are eager to make a move. Some human paragons are also interested. Aren't you afraid of incurring divine punishment?" Su Zimo asked. Daiyu said, "The 5 great holy lands and the 4 paths are like fire and water. They could start another war at any time. The human race has always been neutral. Tianfa Holy Lands may not choose to deal with the human race at this time. This may be a chance for the human race." Su Zimo pondered for a moment before asking, "Tianfa Holy Land set such a rule, did the other 4 holy lands not object?" Daiyu smiled and said, "These rules are meant to intimidate the living beings outside the sacred grounds. All the rules set by the 5 great holy lands are meant to deal with ordinary people. There are no restrictions on the people of the holy lands." "What happened more than 6 billion years ago?" Su Zimo asked again. "I don't know either." Daiyu shook her head and said, "Perhaps only the mountain elder knows what happened back then." After Su Zimo came to Xianmi Mountain, he had heard a child mention the mountain elder's name. He asked, "What was the mountain elder's cultivation?" "Paragon." After a pause, Daiyu continued, "I heard some elders of Xianmi Mountain say that the mountain elder might have been a saint more than 6 billion years ago. Is cultivation dropped?" Su Zimo was somewhat surprised. If the mountain elder had been a saint, he should have been severely injured, causing his cultivation to drop. From another perspective, the mountain elder could keep his life, but only his cultivation dropped. He must have had some extraordinary qualities. Su Zimo asked, "What's the relationship between this mountain elder and the life-sacred land?" "I'm not sure." Daiyu shook her head and said, "No one here knows the mountain elder's background, but the 5 great holy lands seem to be quite polite to him. Something happened back then. A human paragon of the 36 grotto heavens had a conflict with a paragon of the sacred race. He was severely injured and fled here. The mountain elder appeared and resolved the matter. The 2 sides did not fight. The sacred race left and did not pursue the matter. Xianmi Mountain is not among the 36 grotto heavens and 72 blessed lands. However, most of the human experts have been taught by the mountain elder and are extremely respectful to him." Su Zimo nodded thoughtfully. At this moment, Daiyu smiled and said, "Your cultivation is a bit slow. You've been left behind by me again." Su Zimo was stunned. He was overjoyed to reunite with Dai Yu after a long time. He only felt that he had endless things to say and did not even think to check Dai Yu's cultivation. When he heard Dai Yu mention this, he scanned Dai Yu's spirit consciousness with his spirit consciousness and was shocked. A perfected Tao manipulation realm's supreme expert. His journey after ascending to the greater world was rather smooth. He obtained the merit golden lotus and the inheritance memories of the 3 lotus seeds, but he only managed to cultivate to the perfected Tao comprehension realm. Su Zimo smiled bitterly. Back when I saw you die, I even said that I would protect you after you reincarnate. To think that, seems like I'll have to protect you from now on. Dai Yu pinched Su Zimo's palm gently. The two of them exchanged glances and smiled. On second thought, Su Zimo understood the reason. The reason why his cultivation was slower than Dai Yu was because he stayed in the middle world to suppress the netherworld for 60,000 years. However, more importantly, it was because of Dai Yu's talent. 80,000 years was enough for Dai Yu to cultivate to this level. In reality, all the paragons and monster incarnates he met on his path of cultivation, be it the emperors of the middle world who created eras and illuminated the past or the blood demon of Tianhuang mainland and monk Daming, if they were born in the greater world, they would most likely be able to cultivate to this level in 80,000 years as well. The reason why they did not achieve much was because they were born in different realms and at different heights. Did you take the mountain elder as your master? Su Zimo asked. No, Dai Yu replied. The mountain elder is very strange. Many people came to learn from him, but he taught them everything he knew. However, he was unwilling to be anyone's master. Don't underestimate him just because he's a supreme. His understanding of the Tao far surpasses his peers. The mountain elder should be taking an afternoon nap right now. I'll bring you to see him later on. If you can get some pointers from him, it might be of great help to you. There's no hurry. We'll talk about it in the future. Su Zimo smiled. He had just reunited with Dai Yu and only wanted to be with her at the moment. How could he be in the mood to meet a strange old man? Chapter 33-23. Time passed quickly. It had been more than 30,000 years since Su Zimo arrived at Jianghu Mountain. Settling down here with Dai Yu, the two of them worked at sunrise and rested at sunset every day. They drank from the well and ate from the fields. They were like an ordinary couple in the mortal world, far away from the hustle and bustle of the world, enjoying a peaceful and warm time. Ever since Su Zimo started cultivating, he had experienced countless dangers and lingered on the edge of life and death. He established his Tao in Tianhuang mainland, quelling the chaos of the primordial races and the blood demon catastrophe. After ascending to the middle world, he led the living beings of the myriad races to break through the 9 heavens and the heavenly courts before ascending. In her previous life, Dai Yu endured immense pressure to protect the vast wilderness and the butterfly race. Those few years in Pingyang town were the most relaxing for her. It was also because of this that after reincarnating, she had almost forgotten the memories of her previous life. However, she still remembered some things, which was why she had planted a few peach trees here. The two of them fought along the way and were feeling tired deep in their hearts. Before this, the time they spent together could be counted on one hand, and it was always accompanied by all sorts of worries and pressure. It was only at this moment that the two of them finally had some time that belonged to them, and they treasured it exceptionally. The two of them could spend every day together without worrying about the fate of their race or the future. They could live an ordinary life just like that. This day, a few children came to the peach blossom trees and plucked a few ripe peaches. They wiped them casually and took a big bite. Their mouths were filled with juices as they discussed something excitedly. The heavenly courts are truly evil. They sealed off the middle world and prevented people from ascending. Thankfully, there's the Araki Takashi Emperor and the Blood Butterfly Emperor. Araki Takashi established his Tao and imparted martial arts to all living beings. How bold is that? I want to cultivate the Wu Tao from now on. I wonder if I'll have the chance to see the Araki Takashi Emperor in the future. I feel like he's even stronger than my father. I like the Blood Butterfly Emperor. Unfortunately, she was killed by the Brahma Ghost Mother. I wonder how sad the Araki Takashi Emperor is. The children chattered as they ate the peaches. Inside the house, Su Zimo and Dai Yu were surprised to hear the commotion outside. Logically speaking, the children in the outside world shouldn't have the chance to know about these things in the medium-class realm. The two of them walked out the door. When the children saw Su Zimo and Dai Yu, they waved their arms and greeted them. Brother Su, Sister Dai, there's a storyteller at the entrance of the village. He's telling a story about the middle world. It's very interesting. Don't you want to go and listen? A child asked. Storyteller? Su Zimo and Dai Yu exchanged glances. Lin Xuanji. Su Zimo laughed involuntarily. To think that after Lin Xuanji ascended, he actually came to Shenmi Mountain to tell stories. Let's go and meet this old friend. Su Zimo held Dai Yu's hand and followed the group of children towards the entrance of the village. In a village on Shenmi Mountain, there was a group of children gathered at the entrance, and there were many adults who had just finished farming around them, listening to something with interest. In the crowd, there was a slightly plump Dao master in gray robes. He had a pale face and no beard, and a small table was placed in front of him. The gray-robed Dao master held a wooden stick with one hand and waved a folding fan with the other. He was eloquent and his saliva flew everywhere. The children around him were not bothered and listened attentively. The gray-robed Dao master put down the wooden stick and picked up his tea, taking a big gulp. I'm not bragging, but isn't the Emperor Araki Takashi incredible? Actually, I'm not weaker than him either. The two of us can be considered as the most dazzling geniuses in this world. A child pouted his lips. You're just bragging, aren't you? The Emperor Araki Takashi is so glorious. You weren't even mentioned about the chaos of the primordial races, the blood demon catastrophe, or the war of the heavens. Exclamation point. The gray-robed Dao master glared. You're such an unbridled child. How dare you spout nonsense? I'm a humble and low-profile person. I don't like to fight with others. If I were to fight, that lad Araki Takashi would have nothing to do with me. Phew. A series of boos came from the surrounding crowd. Many children giggled and the adults around them laughed without saying anything. When the gray-robed Dao master saw that everyone did not believe him, he whispered mysteriously, "To tell you guys the truth, I even saved Araki Takashi's life back then." I don't believe you. Bullsh*T. Many children jeered. The gray-robed Dao master's face was not red as he said smugly, "Those are just minor details. There's no need to talk about the small gossip about Araki Takashi. Tell us. Seeing that the gray-robed Dao master was keeping them in suspense, many children's interest was piqued and they clamored. The gray-robed Dao master replied casually, back when Araki Takashi's cultivation was still low, he sneaked to a forbidden ground to eat someone's dragon egg. I caught him red-handed. After spending a few days together, you guys should be able to tell what kind of person I am. I'm definitely a warm-hearted and chivalrous person. When I caught sight of that, I roared. Just as the gray-robed Dao master was getting excited, he caught sight of a man and woman standing outside the crowd looking at him with a fake smile from the corner of his eyes. When the gray-robed Dao master caught sight of the two of them, he shuddered. He was just bragging, but who would have thought that he would be seen by the person in question? Feeling guilty, he couldn't say anything else. What happened after that? What did you say? There was no way the children were going to let him off as they pressed relentlessly. The gray-robed Dao master coughed gently with a calm expression. At that time I roared, "Leave some for me." Tisk. The children roared with laughter. The gray-robed Dao master was none other than Lin Xuanji. Standing up, he pushed through the crowd and ran towards Su Zimo and Dai Yu. He was pleasantly surprised and excited as he rubbed his hands and laughed. Isn't this a coincidence? Ah. Su Zimo was delighted to see an old friend as well and gave Lin Xuanji a bear hug. Storyteller, do you know brothers Su and sister Dai? Some of the children asked curiously. Lin Xuanji rolled his eyes and guessed that the people here did not know that Su Zimo and Dai Yu were the Araki Takashi and Empress Blood Butterfly in his story. We're old acquaintances, Lin Xuanji chuckled and replied casually. Fellow Taoist, you're not dead? Lin Xuanji looked at Dai Yu and then at Su Zimo. Su Zimo smiled gently. It's a long story. Let's have a seat at our place and talk. Su Zimo and Dai Yu brought Lin Xuanji down the foot of Shenpin Mountain. When did you ascend? How are your old friends in the Middle Realm? Su Zimo asked. When he saw Lin Xuanji, Su Zimo could not help but recall some of his old friends in the Middle Realm. When he ascended to the Upper Realm, Lin Xuanji, Demoness Ji, Carefree, Nian Chi, Momo, Tiger and others were unable to ascend because they had yet to enter the Emperor Realm. He did not know if they had ascended to the Upper Realm after all these years. Don't worry, Lin Xuanji replied. Everyone is doing well. With your eldest disciple guarding the Middle Realm, the underworld is rather peaceful without much trouble. Chapter 33-24. Me, Demoness Ji and Xiaoyao ascended together 20,000 years ago. Although the others entered the martial Emperor Realm, they chose not to ascend. Lin Xuanji continued, however, after ascending to the Greater Thousand Worlds, the three of us split up. I descended in the southwest while the other two went missing. Su Zimo nodded to himself. Xiaoyao's bloodline had reverted and there was a high chance that he was taken away by the Yin-Yang sacred ground. As for demonish Ji, he did not know where she was. Lin Xuanji continued, most of the people here are humans and they are rather friendly to me. Hence, I wandered around and told stories while asking about the greater thousand worlds. A few years ago, I even heard about your battle at the ancestral fire sacred ground. Later on, I heard that you became the master of chaos. I wanted to look for you in the southeast after my cultivation improved. At that point, Lin Xuanji sighed. My cultivation realm has been widened by you once more. At this moment, Lin Xuanji had yet to manifest his Dao and was only at the perfected martial emperor realm. To be fair, his cultivation speed was not slow. However, compared to Su Zimo, he was slightly inferior. All these years, Su Zimo stayed at the foot of Xianpin Mountain every day with Dai Yu and did not have the heart to cultivate. As such, he did not make any breakthroughs in his cultivation realm and was still at the perfected Dao comprehension realm. Of course, there was a huge gap between the Dao comprehension realm and the Dao manipulation realm. Without special opportunities, it was difficult to make breakthroughs. Lin Xuanji rubbed his chin. I've been telling stories near Xianpin Mountain all these years. I heard that there is a mountain elder here who is proficient in all Daos. If I can get some pointers from him, my cultivation realm might improve by leaps and bounds. Dai Yu said, that's great. I'll bring you guys to meet the mountain elder. Although Su Zimo had stayed at Xianpin Mountain for 30,000 years, he had never met the mountain elder. The three of them arrived at a straw hut at the foot of the mountain and saw a white-haired old man sitting on a rocking chair. He had a relaxed expression and was holding a tattered book in his hands. Sensing their arrival, the white-robed old man placed the tattered book in his hands aside and nodded at the three of them with a smile. However, the white-robed old man's eyes were drooping and he had a bitter expression. Even though he was smiling, he looked miserable. Mountain Elder. The three of them bowed at the same time. Su Zimo was curious about this mountain elder. For the evil lord to send Dai Yu's reincarnation all the way here, he must have trusted the mountain elder enough. He wondered what was the relationship between the mountain elder and the evil lord. Senior, I've encountered a bottleneck in my great change Dao. Lin Xuanji chuckled. I've heard that you're a knowledgeable old man who knows a myriad of Daos and even saints can't compare to you. I wonder if you could give me some pointers? No matter what, Lin Xuanji was the first to compliment him. Mountain Elder said, the number of Dian is 50 and 49 are used. If you want to condense the Tao of Dian, you have to find the elusive one. Where should I go to find the escaped one? Lin Xuanji replied, the great Tao is formless and ethereal. It's not like mystical skills that can be touched and seen everywhere. Otherwise, the Mountain Elder shook his head and said, although the great Tao is formless, it is everywhere. The great Tao is everywhere? Lin Xuanji was a little confused and asked, why do you say that? Why can't I see it? Don't make it sound so mysterious. You have to at least give me a specific location, right? Pausing for a moment, Lin Xuanji winked and asked, Senior, do you have some ruins of a secret realm here with traces of the great Tao? Can you let me study it? The Mountain Elder replied, the Tao is within the ants. Lin Xuanji froze for a moment. As long as one came into contact with the level of Tao, one's strength would be able to reach through the heavens and the earth, overturning rivers and seas. So, how could he be amongst ants? Looking outside, the Mountain Elder swept his gaze across the fields, forests and streams. The Tao is within the fields, forests and mountains. Lin Xuanji scratched his head, confused. Mountain Elder, why would the great Tao be within something as lowly as this? The Tao is within the bricks. The Mountain Elder did not reply and continued. Lin Xuanji could not help but roll his eyes and mutter, good lad, you're getting lowlier? The Mountain Elder burst into laughter. The Tao is drowning in *T. Lin Xuanji was speechless when he heard that. Turning around, he pulled Su Zimo and wanted to leave, muttering, this old man is acting dumb and refuses to impart the real thing. Why did the 3,000 great Daos end up in *T? Lin Xuanji tugged at Su Zimo but did not manage to budge him. At that moment, Su Zimo frowned slightly and was deep in thought. Lin Xuanji was about to speak when Dai Yu pushed him away gently with her sleeves fluttering. She shook her head at him, indicating for him not to disturb Su Zimo. What was going on? Lin Xuanji was confused. This old man was just trying to fool people. Could it be that he could really comprehend something from it? For Su Zimo, the Mountain Elder's words had indeed allowed him to see a world that he had never seen before. The 3,000 great Daos were everywhere. Even the most humble and insignificant things contained the truths of the great Tao. The fields contained the great Tao of earth. Seeds were sown to nurture life and also contained the great Tao of life. The withering of vegetation also contained the great Tao of life and death. The 4 seasons changed, day and night alternated, wind, frost, rain and snow were all great Taos. It was only at that moment that Su Zimo finally understood. When he first saw fishermen, woodcutters and ploughmen fishing, chopping wood and farming, every single action they made was compatible with the great Tao. They had long since mastered the great Tao to the peak and brought it to the point of perfection. It was even more so for the great Tao of chaos. Chaos gave birth to all living beings and all living beings returned to chaos. Traces of the great Tao of chaos could be found in all living beings. Su Zimo had once wanted to search for some items of chaos to comprehend the great Tao of chaos. However, that was rather far-fetched. Everything that he could see, sense and hear actually contained the great Tao of chaos. At that moment, Su Zimo felt as though everything around him was vanishing. As time passed by, the village was no longer a village, the trees were no longer trees and the river was no longer a river. Everything was fading away and in the end, everything turned into chaos. And he was standing in the midst of that chaos. Boom. A loud bang sounded from within his body as though something had shattered. The next moment, the chaos world vanished. The world was the Tao and the Tao was the world. The chaos world fused with the great Tao of chaos and turned into everything that he could control. The chaos world vanished but it was everywhere. Su Zimo finally broke through. At lesser mastery of the Tao manipulation realm, he had become a Tao Lord. The power of his essence spirit increased exponentially as well and reached the level of a supreme. Right now, even without the power of Wu Dao's true body, he could suppress experts like Supreme Lin Meng. Su Zimo opened his eyes and was enveloped by night. The rocking chair in front of him was empty and the mountain elder was nowhere to be seen. Lin Xuanji was gone as well. Only Dai Yu stood not far away, guarding him. Initially Su Zimo wanted to thank the mountain elder. However, he soon realized something and asked, "How long has it been?" Dai Yu smiled. "About a month." "Ah." Su Zimo was stunned for a moment before shaking his head with a bitter smile. In his senses, everything earlier seemed to have happened in the span of a few breaths. However, he did not expect that the entire breakthrough process would last for a month as time passed. During this period of time, Dai Yu had been guarding by his side. Chapter 33-25. Another 20,000 years passed. All these years, because Lin Xuanji had been traveling and telling stories in the southwest, he attracted 3 old friends from the middle realm, Feng Cantian, Old Man Tai Guan and Chess Immortal Jianghu. Old friends reunited and shared interesting stories with one another. It was a joyous occasion. Lin Xuanji, Feng Cantian, Old Man Tai Guan and Jianghu had all sought guidance from the Mountain Elder. All of them benefited and had already entered the Tao comprehending realm. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo and Dai Yu had stayed in Shenmi Mountain for more than 50,000 years. During this period of time, he seemed to have truly distanced himself from all the chaos and strife, enjoying a rare period of peace ever since he started cultivating. Occasionally news would spread from the southeast. The chaos sacred ground was growing stronger day by day under the leadership of Supreme Being Evergreen and the others. Under the protection of the chaos sacred ground, the plant would race gradually rose as well, occupying various territories, and the factions of the 10,000 races withdrew one after another. For the past few days, many cultivators had arrived near Shenmi Mountain, breaking the long-awaited peace. These cultivators came from all over the world. Experts of the human race from the 36 grotto heavens and 72 blessed lands gathered here one after another in a bustling crowd. Even Su Zimo and Dai Yu, who stayed in their rooms every day, sensed it. What happened? Why are there so many people outside? Su Zimo and Dai Yu arrived outside and saw Lin Xuanji, Jianghu and the others walking over. They could not help but ask curiously. Lin Xuanji chuckled and teased, "The two of you are really something. Sticking to each other all day and never leaving each other's side. You guys don't even care about the flood outside." Feng Cantian roared in laughter as well. "When are the two of you going to get married? We're still waiting for your wedding banquet." Although Su Zimo and Dai Yu had long become Tao companions, there was no ceremony for them to get married. Dai Yu was not interested in that. Su Zimo did not care about such formalities either. In their hearts, it was enough as long as they could be together forever. As for the ceremony, it was dispensable. When he heard Feng Santian's words, Su Zimo shook his head and chuckled. "Forget about the ceremony. We can find a time to gather these old friends of ours and drink to our heart's content. Su Zimo looked at Dayu with a questioning gaze. Up to you. Dayu smiled. Then she seemed to have thought of something and said faintly, however, you have to prepare a thoughtful gift for me this time. Su Zimo blushed when he heard that. He couldn't help but recall the gift he gave Dayu when he found her in the Grand Desolation domain. Isn't the gift good? Su Zimo felt a little guilty and coughed lightly. What do you think? Dayu rolled her eyes. What did he give you? Lin Xuanji's eyes burned with the flames of gossip as he approached and asked with a wretched expression. Move aside. Su Zimo pushed Lin Xuanji's head away and changed the topic. What's going on outside? I heard that the Spacetime's sacred land opened up a forbidden area, allowing the paragons of all races to go there and attempt to break through to the Saint Realm and prove their Tao. It was the old man with the iron crown who spoke up to help Su Zimo out of this predicament. The old man with the iron crown said, after hearing this news, many human experts from the 36 Paradise and 72 Blessed Lands have gathered here, preparing to head to this place. A forbidden area of spacetime? Su Zimo raised his brows. Jianghu said, it said that only the experts of the 5 sacred lands can enter this forbidden area of spacetime to prove their Tao. Now that it's open to the experts of all races, it can be considered a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Su Zimo frowned and asked, if it's a forbidden area of the spacetime sacred land, why would they be so kind as to open it to the experts of all races? Lin Xuanji said, I estimate that the 5 sacred lands have suffered many casualties in the Treastrimsa heavens, leaving some great Tao saint seats vacant. They want to gather more saints as soon as possible and urge the races to conquer the 4 Taos once more. That's why they're giving the races such a chance. As far as I know, after this news was released, the races were shaken. Paragons who have cultivated to the peak of the Tao control realm will probably go to the forbidden area of spacetime to try their luck. Su Zimo asked, what's so special about this forbidden area of spacetime that the paragons of all races are tempted? Lin Xuanji said, I heard that in this forbidden area of spacetime, even if one fails to break through to the Saint Realm for the first time, they can guarantee that they won't die. Of course, if they continue to break through and still fail, they will still die. Su Zimo's expression changed. Tao integration to become a saint was extremely dangerous. Since ancient times, there had been countless supremes who had failed in the process of Tao unification and died. There was no turning back after becoming a saint. The moment they failed, they would die. However, according to Lin Xuanji, they would not die even if they failed their first attempt at breaking through to the Saint Realm in this forbidden area of spacetime. This meant that there were 2 chances to break through to the Saint Realm in the forbidden area of spacetime. This temptation was too great for every supreme being expert. It was no wonder that this news would cause the races to be shaken. Unfortunately, he had just cultivated to lesser mastery of the Tao control realm and did not have the chance to break through to the Saint Realm. Otherwise, he would want to enter this forbidden area of spacetime to give it a try. Su Zimo was puzzled and asked, how can this forbidden area of spacetime have such a heaven-defying effect that it can protect the lives of paragons who have failed their Tao integration? I don't know either. Lin Xuanji shook his head. Su Zimo looked towards Dayu instinctively. Dayu did not speak during the conversation earlier on. At this moment, her expression was indifferent and there was even a hint of coldness in the depths of her eyes. This forbidden area of spacetime is related to the human race? Su Zimo vaguely realized something and asked. Dayu nodded. That forbidden area of spacetime was actually the life-sacred land of the past and also the sacred land of the human race. However, more than 6 billion years ago, the spacetime sacred land sealed it and took it for themselves. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Lin Xuanji came to a realization. No wonder I couldn't find the life-sacred land after so many years of traveling. It was already taken away by the spacetime sacred land. Dayu said, there is a life stone in the life-sacred land. If one fails to break through to the Saint Realm for the first time in the sacred land, this life stone will release a large amount of vitality to resist the backlash of the great Tao and protect the cultivator's life. Originally, the life-sacred land was prepared for the human race. Unfortunately, it has been taken over by the spacetime sacred land for the people of the 5 sacred lands to cultivate. Su Zimo was silent. Under the suppression of the heavenly punishment sacred land, the human race had no saints. In the face of such humiliation, they naturally could not resist. Jianghu said, since the spacetime sacred land has released the news that this place is open to all races, this naturally includes the human race. Fellow Taoist has already cultivated to the peak of the Tao manipulation realm, so you might as well go to the life-sacred land and give it a try. Forget it. Dai Yu shook her head. The great Tao that I cultivate has already had someone become a saint. Even if I go to the life-sacred land, I won't have a chance to break through to the saint realm. To me, becoming a saint or not is no longer important. After saying this, Dai Yu and Su Zimo looked at each other and smiled. The two of them understood each other's intentions. In her last life, Dai Yu pursued eternal life and an even vaster world. However, she had died once and been reborn, so her mentality had changed greatly. Only when she awakened her memories and saw Su Zimo did she understand what was most important. End of this chapter. Chapter 33-26. The moment the forbidden land of spacetime opened, a spatial node appeared in every major territory, allowing Tao manipulation realm experts to enter. The spatial node in the southwestern territory was located near Profound Valley Mountain. In the past few days, many human Tao sovereigns, great sovereigns, and even sovereigns of the 36 paradise and 72 blessed lands had gathered here. Just the number of supreme being experts of the human clan added up to several hundred. Through this spatial node, one could see what was happening in the forbidden land of spacetime. Thus, many Tao sovereigns and great sovereigns had come to witness the moment when the human Tao integration saints became saints. After all, to them this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a most precious experience. However, because the mountain elder had come forward to stop them, the human sovereigns had not entered the forbidden land of spacetime after it opened. The spacetime sacred land has released the news that the forbidden land is open to all races, including the human race. Why does the mountain elder want us to give up? That's right. The forbidden land of spacetime is the life-sacred land of our human race. Why can't we humans go there? Is the mountain elder worried about something? The mountain elder spent most of his time in Profound Valley Mountain, living a carefree life and secluded from worldly affairs. However, the human experts of the 36 paradise and 72 blessed lands had mostly received the mountain elder's teachings and were extremely respectful to him. However, with the chance to become a saint right in front of them, the human experts were unwilling to give up, nor could they understand the mountain elder's intentions. The mountain elder softly sighed. The spacetime sacred land has opened the forbidden land, drawing in the sovereigns of all races. When the time comes, the life-sacred land might have hundreds of thousands of sovereigns. After reaching the Tao manipulation realm, one had a lifespan of 10 billion years. In this long period of time, even the weakest race would give birth to a few geniuses who would eventually become sovereigns. For example, some powerful clans might have dozens or even hundreds of supreme beings. When the sovereigns of all races gathered, the mountain elder's words of hundreds of thousands were no exaggeration. The mountain elder said, hundreds of thousands of sovereigns are all hegemons of their own regions. With them gathered together, there are too many variables. It's very likely that things will go out of control. All of you must be aware that the number of vacant great Tao Saint positions is limited. Among the hundreds of thousands of sovereigns, many of them will cultivate the same great Tao. It's very likely that conflicts will break out. Once someone became a sage, other cultivators who cultivated this great Tao would no longer have a chance. Therefore, supremes who cultivated the same type of great Tao would have a trace of enmity between each other. If they were all in the great thousand realms and each occupied an area, there would be many restrictions. Perhaps they would not fight. However, with so many supreme beings gathered in the forbidden land of life, the possibility of such a conflict greatly increased. One of the human race sovereigns said, apart from the various sacred grounds, the number of human race sovereigns among the myriad of races is definitely at the forefront. Even if a war breaks out, we humans will not lose to them. That's right. All these years, the status of the human race had not been high only because they had no saints. However, under the saint realm, the human race is not weaker than any other race. If we compete fairly for the position of great Tao saint, I believe that in the life-sacred land, our human race will have a better chance. After all, the life-sacred land was once the sacred land of the human race. In this holy land, the human clan must have been blessed with all kinds of luck, which made it easier for them to break through to the saint realm. The mountain elder bitterly smiled. It is precisely because of this that the life-sacred land is more likely to become the target of public criticism. The various human race sovereigns were all shaken as they understood the reason. In the life-sacred land, it was easier for the human race to become a saint, which meant that the other races had a lower chance of becoming a saint. In this way, it was very easy to arouse the hostility of the other races. The chatter in the crowd gradually died down. Gu Liang and the other human race experts present had lived for more than 1 billion years, perhaps even several billion years. They naturally understood the dangers involved. After a long period of silence, the atmosphere was somewhat oppressive. Finally, someone spoke. Are we just going to give up like this? The path of cultivation is long and arduous. I've endured for so many years just for this opportunity. Not only is there a vacancy for a great Tao saint, but we can also go to the human race's sacred land. I don't want to give up. That's the human race's sacred land, but we've never set foot there. Why should we retreat from the human race's sacred land? They should be the ones to retreat. Even if it's extremely dangerous, I still want to try. If a human can become a saint, even if they die, they can rest in peace. As long as a saint is born in the human race, we will have hope and a future. The various human race sovereigns spoke with impassioned voices, their eyes flashing with determination. The mountain elder shook his head and sighed deeply. 36 grotto heavens and 72 blessed lands. To be precise, almost none of the humans in the southwest had experienced the turmoil back then. Nor had they seen the tragic scene of a saint's life being sacrificed like grass. More than 6 billion years ago, there were 3,000 saints of the human race, the leader of all races. But so what? However, when the mountain elder saw the gazes of the human race sovereigns, he knew that no matter how he persuaded them, it would be useless. The spirit and fighting spirit that these humans exuded moved him and made him sigh with emotion. Compared to these humans, he was like a lethargic old man with one foot in the grave. Farewell, everyone. Hundreds of human race sovereigns looked at the large group of humans near Jianghu mountain and waved gently. Then they bowed deeply to the mountain elder and rushed toward the spatial node without looking back. Looking at the departing figures of the human race sovereigns, the mountain elder sighed again. This time was supposed to be his lunch break. But now the mountain elder had no intention of leaving. Instead, he stood there with the other human race experts, looking at the images of the forbidden land of spacetime reflected in the void. The fisherman, the woodcutter, the farmer, and the cook who had been fishing by the stream all came to the mountain elder's side. They had followed the mountain elder more than 6 billion years ago. In the past few years, they had long since put down their weapons and simply enjoyed the pleasures of nature. Now that the forbidden land of spacetime was open, the 4 of them had no intention of entering. Seeing the mountain elder's worried expression, the fisherman said, "Mountain elder, there is no need to worry. If several hundred human race sovereigns gather together, there are few races that can oppose them. The 10,000 races are a sheet of loose sand. It won't be easy to unite them unless." The woodcutter was halfway through his sentence when he suddenly stopped. The cook guessed at the woodcutter's worries and said, "Even if there are people from the sacred land interfering, the 4 paths won't just sit by and watch." The mountain elder shook his head. Once the 4 paths sovereigns leave the Trayastrimsa heaven and enter the life-sacred land, the sacred race sovereigns of the 5 sacred lands will definitely appear and lead the 10,000 races in encirclement. The demon lord and evil lord can naturally see this and will not allow the 4 paths sovereigns to participate. The fisherman said thoughtfully, "If the 4 paths sovereigns don't interfere, they can only watch as more and more saints are born among the 10,000 races and join the 5 sacred lands, then turn around and deal with them. This is the 5 sacred lands' overt scheme." The farmer looked at the many figures in the forbidden land of spacetime and muttered, "I hope they can return safely." Chapter 33:27. The moment the human supremes stepped into the forbidden land of spacetime, their expressions were somewhat dazed and filled with emotion. This was once the holy land of the human race. But for more than 6 billion years they had never set foot in it. Some of the human supremes bent down and picked up a handful of yellow soil with tears in their eyes. For some reason, an inexplicable sadness welled up in their hearts. "Everyone, the future of the human race depends on us." Supreme Jianghu took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "That's right." Supreme Hui Ming put his palms together and softly chanted a Buddhist mantra. Everyone moved and headed toward the center of the Holy Land. Along the way they saw many supremes speeding through the air. Tens of thousands of supremes had gathered here. Supremes of various races could be seen almost everywhere. Not long after, the human supremes saw an ancient and dilapidated city appear at the end of the horizon. That was once the holy land of the human race, the city of life. However, now only some dilapidated walls remained. The dilapidated city walls stood there, and one could vaguely see the prosperity of this ancient city. In the middle of the ancient city sat an ancient palace. Its 4 sides had long been destroyed, and only a few thick stone pillars remained to support the palace. It looked like it was on the verge of collapse. In the middle of the palace, there stood a white jade stone taller than a person. This white jade stone was the stone of life of the human race. The closer they got to the city of life, the more supremes they encountered. Although in the Life Holy Land, no matter where they were, they could try to break through to the Saint Realm. However, the majority of Supreme Being experts still wished to be closer to the Stone of Life. In order to avoid unnecessary conflict, the human Supremes did not rashly step forward. Instead, they settled down near the City of Life and spread out. In fact, hundreds of human Supremes, only 100 or so had the chance to break through to the Saint Realm. The other human Supremes all had saints occupying the Great Path Saint positions that they cultivated. Although these human Supremes had no hope of reaching the Tao integration stage, they guarded these 100 or so Supremes. They were on guard to prevent accidents. Among the tens of thousands of races, there were almost no races hundreds of Supremes could be born. Seeing the formation of the human race, most of them avoided and took a detour. Time passed. More and more humans gathered near Jianghu Mountain. It wasn't just Tao masters. Many cultivators of low realms also came here when they heard that the human race might produce a saint. In the blink of an eye, a year passed. The first saint was finally born in the Forbidden Land of Time. It came from the Heavenly Eye clan and was compatible with the great Tao of petrification. Becoming a saint. This scene caused many Heavenly Eye tribe members to cheer. The Spacetime Sacred Land has issued an order. After becoming a saint, he had to leave the forbidden spacetime zone as soon as possible. The saint of the Heavenly Eye clan did not dare to disobey. He left immediately. Over the past year, other supreme beings had also attempted to break through to the saint realm, but they all ended in failure. With the protection of the Stone of Life, although they did not die from Tao disintegration, these supreme being experts did not dare to recklessly attempt Tao integration again. If he failed again, not even the Stone of Life could save him. Most of the supreme being experts were secretly preparing, adjusting their states, and looking for the most perfect and suitable opportunity. Over the past year, more than 100 human supremes who had the chance to break through to the Saint Realm had yet to try. On this day, in the crowd, Supreme Being Jianghu suddenly opened his eyes. Divine light blossomed from them as he attempted the Tao integration stage to break through into the Sage stage. To become a saint was to fuse the great Tao that one cultivated with one's flesh, blood, and primordial spirit. This had extremely high requirements for one's physical body, bloodline, and primordial spirit. Furthermore, it required an understanding of the great Tao that surpassed others. Supreme Being Jianghu had a pained expression as his body trembled continuously. Dense traces of the great Tao appeared on the surface of his body. Poof! All of a sudden, Supreme Being Jianghu's expression changed drastically. He spat out a large mouthful of blood and his entire body was about to collapse. Right then, a majestic vitality burst forth from the direction of the Stone of Life and entered Supreme Being Jianghu's body. It resisted the backlash of the great Tao and helped him recover from his injuries. A moment later, Supreme Being Jianghu had recovered. However, he had already failed his first Tao integration. When the humans on Xianmi Mountain saw this scene, they all revealed a trace of pity. In the Forbidden Land of Time, Supreme Being Jianghu's expression was grim as he carefully recalled the process of the Tao integration just now. He deduced every detail and experienced every bit of enlightenment. Brother Jiang, don't be discouraged. You'll still have a chance after recuperating for a period of time. That's right. That Heavenly Eye tribe member also succeeded in his second Tao integration after half a year. Everyone thought that Supreme Being Jianghu had suffered a blow and consoled him. A moment later, Supreme Being Jianghu clenched his fist slightly and said in a deep voice, "I'm going to attempt Tao integration again. Fellow Taoists, success or failure depends on this." Brother Jiang, don't be rash. Although there are many Supremes in the Forbidden Land of Time who also cultivate the title Tao, they might not be able to succeed in Tao integration. Tao integration is no small matter. We can't rush it. The Supremes of the human race hurriedly persuaded. Supreme Being Jianghu smiled casually. If I succeed, there's naturally nothing more to say. If I fail, this will be the last time we meet. The moment he said that, Supreme Being Jianghu attempted Tao integration again. If he failed this Tao integration, there would only be one outcome: death by Tao integration. Be it in the Forbidden Land of Time or Xianmi Mountain, many humans watched this scene nervously. Traces of the great Tao appeared around Supreme Being Jianghu's body once more. They were densely packed and supported his body into the air. His expression was also changing rapidly. One moment it was flushed red and the next moment, it was purplish green. His condition was extremely unstable. Although his body did not collapse, The surface of his body was cracking continuously. Blood seeped out and dyed his clothes red. His life was hanging by a thread. Everyone held their breaths and stared at this scene without blinking. They were extremely nervous. An unknown period of time passed. A loud bang sounded from Supreme Being Jianghu's body and his aura skyrocketed. The next moment, the world trembled and the great Tao resonated. The sound of tides could be heard and attracted countless gazes. The many Supremes in the forbidden land of time and space realized that another saint was born. The faces of some of the 9 heaven Supremes who practiced the Tai Tao darkened when they saw this. Their faces turned extremely ugly. The ascension of Supreme Being Jianghu to a saint meant that their path to becoming a saint was completely severed. In the vicinity of Jianghu Mountain, after a short period of silence, there was a burst of cheers and a hubbub of voices. A saint of the human race. When the fisherman, woodcutter, farmer and chef saw that, they heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. Right then, Dharma Master Hui Ming stood up and attempted Tao integration to break through to the saint realm. Dharma Master Hui Ming's body shone with a Buddhist light that intensified. Before long, Sanskrit sounds suddenly sounded from the world. Dharma Master Hui Ming's aura skyrocketed and he fused with the great Tao of transcendence, attaining eternal life and becoming a saint. Dharma Master Hui Ming succeeded in his first Tao integration. The humans of Xianmi Mountain were invigorated when they saw 2 Supremes of the human race becoming saints one after another. They were extremely excited and beamed. Amidst the clamor and joy, the mountain elder was the only one who still had a bitter expression. He frowned and there was no joy on his face. Instead, the worry in his eyes intensified. End of chapter. Chapter 33-28. At the foot of Xianpin Mountain. Su Zimo and Dai Yu lived here in seclusion and did not participate in this extremely important event for the human race. Living a leisurely and peaceful life far away from the fighting was what the 2 of them yearned for. Of course, when they heard the cheers in the distance and realized that the human race had produced a saint, Su Zimo and Dai Yu were overjoyed and celebrated. As they chatted, Su Zimo suddenly thought of something and asked, "I've seen the sacred clans of the 5 sacred lands, but I've never seen the sacred clans of the life sacred land in all these years. Could it be that none of their bloodlines have survived? There are no sacred race in the life sacred land." Dai Yu shook her head. According to the mountain elder, there were no sacred race in the life sacred land even 6 billion years ago. That's strange. Su Zimo frowned slightly. The sign of becoming a sacred race was bloodline ancestral awakening. Did the beings of the life sacred land not show signs of ancestral awakening? Bloodline ancestral awakening. Su Zimo murmured thoughtfully. 3 days later. As usual, the 2 of them worked at sunrise and rested at sunset. It was no different from their usual routine. But on this morning the 2 of them felt something strange at the same time. Every day at this time in the nearby villages, many people got up one after another to work, smoke rising from the chimneys of the houses. The children's running and the adults scolding intertwined, awakening the vitality of this paradise. But at this moment the surroundings were quiet and lifeless. It was eerily quiet. A stifling silence. Su Zimo frowned and exchanged a glance with Dai Yu. They both saw the strange look in each other's eyes. There was definitely no fighting near Xianpin Mountain, and there was no smell of blood. Otherwise, the 2 of them would have noticed it long ago. At this moment, a girl ran over from afar, her face full of tears. It was she who told Su Zimo about Dai Yu in the ancestral fire sacred land. Over the years, Su Zimo had heard Dai Yu mention it. This girl was called Haitang. She was the woodcutter's daughter. 10,000 years ago, she had stepped into the Tao manipulation realm. She became a Tao sovereign. When she got close, Haitang threw herself into Dai Yu's arms and cried loudly. "What happened?" Dai Yu gently stroked Haitang's back. She asked softly. "Father and the others are trapped inside. There's no way out." Haitang's eyes were already red from crying. Dai Yu frowned slightly and asked, "Didn't your father not intend to enter the forbidden area of time and space? What happened? Tell me slowly." Haitang pursed her lips. She sobbed again and again. He tried his best to calm his breathing. He said, "After Jianghu and Hui Ming became martial saints, the 2 martial saints became martial saints. The supreme beings of the human race inside. This will cause the other experts to be extremely hostile. Under the instigation of the people from the Holy Lands, the supremes of the various clans joined hands. I want to drive the hundreds of human autarchs out of the forbidden area of spacetime." Su Zimo and Dai Yu heard this. They all frowned. Haitang continued, "That place is the life-sacred land of our human race, so the human race's supremes are naturally unwilling to leave." As the two sides faced each other, a conflict broke out. Su Zimo asked, "Where are Saints Jianghu and Hui Ming?" "They have already returned to Xianmi Mountain," Haitang said, "after becoming a saint. They can't stay in the life-sacred land." After a pause, Haitang continued, "What's more, this is a conflict between supremes. They are saints. There's no way to interfere." "And then?" Yu asked. Haitang continued, "Father and the fisherman's three uncles saw that the situation was not good. They set off to enter the life-sacred land. They prepared to persuade the human supremes to return. At least when they return to the Great Thousand World, they will have a chance to become a saint in the future. If they are buried inside, they will have no chance at all. But the situation is changing rapidly. By the time Father and the other three arrived, the situation was already out of control, and both sides were dying. Father and the other three were also trapped. There was no way out, so they could only lead the human supremes to fight their way out. They retreated to the nearest life city. At this point, Haitang started crying again. Father and the others can't hold on much longer. What should we do? In a short while, Su Zimo, Yu, and Yu had already arrived near the spatial node and saw a large crowd. An endless crowd. The atmosphere was extremely stifling, with only the occasional sobbing. Everyone had sorrowful expressions as they looked at the scene reflected by the spatial node. Su Zimo and Yu also looked up. They saw that various places in the forbidden land of spacetime were fighting and killing. There was chaos. The flames of war were everywhere. In the largest battlefield in the City of Life. In the air above this dilapidated ancient city, many supremes stood in the air, exuding powerful auras as they surrounded the City of Life so tightly that not even a drop of water could pass through. There were not many empty Great Tao Saint positions. Many supremes who cultivated the same Great Tao were already hostile to each other. But the supremes were still able to restrain themselves, abiding by some tacit understanding and doing their best to maintain a balance. Before this, all the supremes had tacitly agreed to a certain rule. Even if they cultivated the same Great Tao, it would depend on their own ability to see who could succeed in Tao integration, and the appearance of the human supremes to seize karmic luck. This balance was broken. The birth of two saints in the human race caused a huge commotion among the myriad races. Even the supremes of the 5 great sacred lands were not confident. They stood out to incite the supremes of the myriad races to expel the human supremes from the forbidden land of spacetime. This action was equivalent to breaking the tacit rule in the hearts of the supremes. If they could use force to clear the obstacles ahead and seize the Great Tao Saint position, then others could do the same. At this point, the supremes of the various races fell into a chaotic battle for the Great Tao Saint position. Although the supremes of the 5 great sacred lands were not of the sacred race, they were still above the myriad races and had unshakable status and prestige. Under their orders, more and more supreme being experts gathered under their command, and they quickly formed the 5 largest forces. The current situation was becoming clearer and clearer. Only by joining one of the 5 great sacred lands would one not be targeted. Even if some supremes did not have any hostility towards the human race, they would still choose to join the 5 great sacred lands in order to protect themselves. At this moment, the number of supremes around the City of Life had already reached 300,000. And this number was still rapidly increasing. Even though they were looking at this scene through the spatial node, they could still feel the pressure brought about by the dozens of supreme being experts. It was suffocating. At this moment, the supremes of the myriad races gathered here with only one goal: the hundreds of supremes of the human race in the City of Life. Under the repeated attacks of the supremes of the myriad races, the City of Life had long been destroyed and reduced to ruins. Even the originally crumbling palace had collapsed. There was only a stone of life left in the ruins. There was also a group of human supremes surrounding the stone of life. The city was broken and the palace collapsed, but the people were still there. Saint Jianghu, Saint Huiming, please step forward and bring them back. That's right, only you can resolve this situation. The human cultivators could not stand it anymore and turned to look at the 2 saints Jianghu and Huiming who had just stepped into the sage stage. Saint Jianghu had a troubled expression. The other races have saints, and so do the 5 great sacred lands. Once we step forward and break the balance, the saints of the various races and even the saints of the 5 great sacred lands might appear. When that time comes, at this point Saint Jianghu lowered his head slightly and sighed. Saint Huiming did not dare to meet the gazes of the many humans. He lowered his head with a guilty expression. The main reason why they did not dare to step forward was because they were worried that if they interfered, they would offend the sacred lands and attract heavenly punishment. Are we just going to watch our supremes of the human race die in there? Is there anyone who can come and save them? More and more cries came from the crowd. Mountain Elder frowned with a bitter expression. He did not say anything and the sorrow in his eyes intensified. Within the forbidden grounds of time and space, the supremes of the human race were already covered in injuries. However, every single one of them had fearless expressions as they stood with their heads held high without any intention of retreating in their eyes. Even against enemies 10 or 100 times stronger than them, the supremes of the human race did not yield. The difference between the two sides was too great. They were already prepared to die. Even though they knew that there was no hope, they did not give up on resisting. It was as though there was an invisible force supporting them. He's so silly. Why isn't he willing to back down? A woman with a big belly could not help but cry out when she saw her Tao partner fall into the trap. The people of the sacred land said that as long as he's willing to cripple his own Tao, he can save his life. What are they holding on for? Is it worth it? Someone asked in a daze amidst their heartache. Dignity and glory. A woman's voice was heard. It was calm but powerful. Everyone turned towards the source of the voice and saw Su Zimo and Dai Yu walking through the crowd. Everyone was deep in thought and vaguely understood something. When they turned back to look at the supremes of the human race in the forbidden zone of time and space, they felt an impact that struck their hearts and tears filled their eyes instantly. Those people stepped on the ruins of the ancient city and protected the dignity of the human race with their lives. With the life stone behind them, they protected the glory of the human race with their blood. Su Zimo and Dai Yu exchanged glances and understood each other's thoughts at the same time. Dai Yu had died once and was reborn. She was already tired of fighting and killing. In fact, she did not care much about the sage realm or eternal life and was indifferent to them. Su Zimo had been cultivating and finally found Dai Yu. After living a peaceful and leisurely life, he was already tired of fighting and killing. However, when they saw that the human race was in trouble and was being bullied, they did not hesitate at all and decided to join forces once more to head to the forbidden zone of time and space. Dai Yu brought Haitang to the mountain elder and bowed slightly. Sister Dai, where are you guys going? As though she realized something, Haitang asked with a trembling voice. We're going to bring your father back. Dai Yu smiled gently. Don't, it's too dangerous inside. Although Haitang was worried about her father, she did not want Dai Yu to be in danger. You're only at lesser mastery of the Tao manipulation realm. Are you confident? Lin Xuanji came over as well and looked at Su Zimo, asking softly, how about you stay outside and not be a burden to them? Su Zimo smiled and did not explain. Walking together with Dai Yu, he headed towards the dimensional node of the forbidden zone of time and space right in front of everyone's shocked gazes. Even the two saints, Jiang Chao and Hui Ming, raised their heads and looked at them in disbelief. Against dozens of supreme experts, entering at this moment was equivalent to courting death. The human supremes inside had no way out and were willing to die for their dignity and glory. That was understandable. But why were those two doing it? Mountain Elder, please persuade them. Haitang could not help but ask with a worried expression. Mountain Elder looked at the backs of the two and remained silent. However, the worry in his eyes seemed to have faded a little. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 33-29. The Forbidden Land of Spacetime. Although there were many autarchs gathered around the City of Life, more than 300,000 of them, there were not many who attacked the human autarchs. Most of them had the mentality of watching a good show from the sidelines. Those who truly wanted to kill these human race supremes were either enemies of the human race in the past, or they cultivated the same great Tao and competed with each other. Even so, there were still more than 10,000 autarchs. To the hundreds of human autarchs, more than 10,000 autarchs was a force that they would find difficult to resist. If not for the fishermen, woodcutter, farmer and chefs of Xianmi Mountain, all the autarchs of the 36 grotto heavens and 72 blessed lands standing at the very front would have perished. The great Taos cultivated by the 4 autarchs of Xianmi Mountain were extremely unique. Some were extremely ordinary, but when used by the 4 of them, they possessed boundless power. The fisherman wielded a fishing rod, using the great Tao as a line to fish out all living beings. Every time he flung out his fishing rod, he would fish out an autarch and toss them out. Meanwhile, the woodcutter cultivated the Tao of felling. However, this was different from how he usually cut down trees. At this moment, the hatchet in his hand was no longer felling trees, but autarchs. The chefs cultivated the great Tao of cooking. Wielding 2 ox-dismembering knives, they flew up and down with ease. In the blink of an eye, they could turn a living being into a skeleton without a speck of flesh or blood on them. Meanwhile, the farmer cultivated the great Tao of life. In his hands, the power of the great Tao flowed endlessly, filling the sky with willow catkins that healed the injuries of the fisherman, the woodcutter, the chefs, and the other human autarchs. Of course, in the eyes of the autarchs of the various sacred lands, the humans below were already birds in a cage, fish on the chopping block. With a single order, hundreds of thousands of autarchs could charge forward and crush these humans to death at any time. Are you still going to put up a desperate struggle? Autarch Wuxia of the spacetime sacred land stood in the air, looking down at the fishermen and the others. He smiled faintly and said, "I'm only giving these human autarchs a chance to live because of the 4 of you, but you'd better know what's good for you." The fisherman said in a low voice, "Wuxia, we will take the remaining human autarchs and leave this place. We will not fight with you for the great Tao Saint position." "No." Supreme Wuxia's expression was cold as he shook his head and said, "If you leave this place, you will still have a chance to become a saint. Because of our old friendship, I don't want to kill all of you. As long as you are willing to destroy your great Tao, I can spare your lives." Destroying one's own great Tao meant that one's cultivation level would drop, and one would have to cultivate from the beginning. "Don't waste your breath on him." One of the human race supremes laughed and said, "The human race has given birth to 2 saints. Today, even if we die here, we can rest in peace." "Exactly." Another human race supreme martial artist said, "If you don't become a saint, death is inevitable. If I can die in the human race's sacred land, under the stone of life, that would be the best ending I can think of." The supremes of the human race were united against a common enemy. They were already prepared to die. They stood on the land that had given birth to the human race, unwilling to throw away the dignity of the human race, and even more unwilling to abandon the glory of the human race. They knew that at this moment, there were countless members of their race, creatures of all races, watching them from the outside. If they were to submit in front of the myriad races, it would be difficult for the human race to straighten their backs in the future. "Since you all want to die, I'll fulfill your wish." Supreme Wuxia waved his hand, pointed forward and ordered, "Kill them all." Many of the supremes in the crowd hesitated. In fact, many supremes had gathered under the 5 sacred lands only to protect themselves. They had no choice but to do so. They had no grudges with the human race, and they did not want to be enemies with the human race. However, at this moment, the supremes of the various races were no longer in control. Moreover, killing these human supremes was equivalent to clearing away the obstacles. It could indeed increase their chances of becoming a saint by a little. "Ha ha ha ha." Chef suddenly laughed loudly and said, "How sad, how sad. You obey the 5 sacred lands and help them do evil. Do you really think you can be spared? Today we will be buried here and the next one will be you." The supremes of the myriad races were silent. Even if Guho realized this, what could he do? Could they join forces to deal with the 5 sacred lands? In the upper-class world, the 5 sacred lands were high and mighty, controlling everything. Who dared to go against them? More and more supremes stepped forward and joined the battle. Between heaven and earth, the great Tao crisscrossed, intertwining and spreading. The pressure on the fishermen and the other humans increased. They were already at the end of their rope to be able to hold on until now. After all, the difference in numbers between the 2 sides was too great. Even if Supreme Wuxia did not give the order, they would not be able to hold on for long. The fisherman said coldly, "Your sacred lands broke the rules, causing everyone here to be in danger and fall into war. You deserve to be killed." Supreme Wuxia chuckled and said, "What is a sacred land? The existence of a sacred land is to ignore the rules and laws. All the rules and laws in this world are to restrict you ants. The people of our sacred lands can surpass the rules at any time. The sacred lands are nothing special." At this moment, a voice came from afar. Before anyone could react, this voice had already arrived in front of them at an extremely fast speed. The person spoke again, "Not to mention the people of the sacred lands, I have also killed the sacred race." As soon as he finished speaking, it was earth-shattering. The person who spoke had even killed the sacred race. This sentence caused an uproar among the supremes of the myriad races. Even the attacks on the fishermen and the other supremes of the human race paused. The supremes of the myriad races turned their heads and looked towards the voice. They saw 2 figures flying in the air. It was a man and a woman. The man had black hair and a green robe, while the woman wore a blood-red robe. The 2 of them stood side by side, their clothes fluttering in the wind, like an immortal couple made in heaven. Who are these two people? I seem to have seen that green-robed man somewhere before. Whether it was Su Zimo or Dayu, it had not been long since they rose to power. Su Zimo had truly become famous in the vast thousand world in the four great mountain ranges of the ancestral fire-sacred land. However, that was a battle between heavenly venerables, and not many Dao manipulation realm experts paid attention to it. Almost all the Supremes present had never seen him before. After Dayu stepped into cultivation, she lived in seclusion in Xianmi Mountain all year round and rarely showed herself. In the vast thousand world she was also unknown. Therefore, after the two of them appeared, not many of the Supremes present recognized them. Ha! A Dao venerate at the initial stage of the Dao manipulation realm actually dares to come here. A Protoss Supreme sneered slightly. Almost all those who entered the forbidden land of time and space were perfected Dao manipulation realm experts who could break through to the Saint realm at any time. Su Zimo was only at the initial stage of the Dao manipulation realm, so he was naturally not taken seriously by the Supremes. A Dao venerate dares to say that he has killed people from the sacred land and even the sacred race? Another Heavenly Eye Clan Supreme sneered. Aha, aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? The Supremes all roared with laughter. He really did kill the sacred race and he killed 4 of them. At this moment, Wuxia's voice sounded. The smiles of the Supremes froze on their faces, and the laughter around them gradually faded. Wuxia stared at Su Zimo and said faintly, Su Zimo, you are finally willing to come out. Wuxia was among the experts who attacked the chaotic sacred land back then. Chapter 3330. Who is Su Zimo? I think I've heard of him somewhere before. I remember now. The current owner of the chaotic sacred land is Su Zimo. Discussions broke out among the crowd in the forbidden land of time and space. Supreme Wuxia sneered. You didn't hide in the chaotic sacred land and came to me yourself. Don't blame me for what I'm going to do. The grudge between us can be settled any time. Su Zimo's expression was normal. He glanced at the hundreds of human Supremes around the Stone of Life and said, but before that, let them leave first. A Stone Tribe Supreme snorted. Even if you're the Master of Chaos, you don't have that much face. This group of Supremes had just fought with the Fishermen and the Human Supremes. Both sides had suffered casualties. How could they let them go so easily? Brother Su, Miss Dai, leave quickly. Don't worry about us. The chef shouted. However, under Wuxia's signal, a group of Supremes had already surrounded them and blocked Su Zimo and Daiyu's escape route. Interesting. Supreme Wuxia chuckled. You can't even protect yourself and you still want to meddle in other people's business. You must be tired of living. Are you not going to let them go? Su Zimo looked around and only received cold and mocking gazes. Then who lives and who dies? That might not be the case. Su Zimo muttered softly. Acting all mysterious. Kneel down. 2 Supremes attacked. One of them controlled the great Dao, and his aura was deep and unfathomable. It was also like a mountain. It weighed more than 10,000 pounds. The great Dao of Heaven's might descended. The other Supreme Being's figure was like a specter. They disappeared instantly. They moved stealthily in Daiyu's direction. The great Dao of Ghosts. Under such pressure, Su Zimo only needed to circulate his qi and blood slightly. Then he dissolved it. Then he moved and instantly appeared in front of this person. He flipped his palm. He slapped the top of this person's head. This Supreme Being was greatly shocked. He didn't expect that his great Dao of Heavens might seem to have no effect on Su Zimo. By the time Su Zimo reached him, it was already too late for him to dodge. This paragon once again controlled the great Dao of Heaven's might, circling around his arms, wanting to block Su Zimo's palm strike. Bang! Fist and arm collided. A muffled sound rang out as if they had been defeated. Ka-ka-ka. Before anyone could react, the ear-piercing sound of bones cracking rang out. The arm of this sovereign was broken. It was broken by Su Zimo's palm. In front of Su Zimo, this autarka's heavenly might great Dao and physical body were both in front of him. Unable to withstand a single blow. The palm slammed down. It only paused for a moment before it broke through the obstruction. It landed on the sovereign's head. It was shattered into pieces. His primordial spirit was also destroyed. Death of body and Dao. A Supreme Being was unable to withstand a single blow from Su Zimo. What was even more terrifying was that Su Zimo didn't even control the great Dao that he cultivated. He only relied on his physical body and bloodline. He killed a Supreme Being with a slap. Those who could calm their physical body and bloodline and forcefully resist the great Tao. Perhaps only the sacred clans of the various sacred grounds could do it. All the Supreme Being experts present. Most of them didn't put Su Zimo in their eyes. It was none other than because Su Zimo's cultivation realm wasn't high. However, he had already fused with the Qinglian of creation, the red lotus of hellfire, and the golden lotus of merit. His bloodline were even stronger than the sacred clans of the same level. Especially after fusing with the golden lotus of merit, his physical strength soared. He had already reached the immortal realm. A flawless, unparalleled realm. On the other side, the Supreme Being who cultivated the great Tao of ghosts came to Dai Yu's side. Dai Yu didn't seem to notice. She still didn't move. However, the moment this Supreme Being attacked beside Dai Yu, a storm was suddenly stirred up and engulfed this Supreme Being. Ah! This Supreme Being let out a miserable scream. In the blink of an eye, he was torn apart by this storm that appeared out of nowhere. His body and soul were destroyed. The great Tao of wind, the fisherman, the woodcutter, and the others weren't worried about Dai Yu. They knew. This Dai Yu's combat strength. In fact, she was even stronger than them. What they were most worried about was still Su Zimo. No matter what, Su Zimo was only at the small success stage of the Tao manipulation realm. And now, there were far too many Supreme Beings gathered under the 5 sacred lands. More than 300,000 of them, densely packed, blotting out the sun. Only when one was in the situation and faced with such a terrifying battle array could one feel the suffocating sense of oppression. The many humans around Xianku Mountain were also nervous, their hearts hanging high as they stared unblinkingly at the great battle that was about to erupt in the forbidden land of spacetime. The gap between the two sides was too great. There were only 2 people. How could they save the hundreds of human Supreme Beings inside? Supreme Being Wuxia smiled and declared, "Whoever can kill these 2, I will give them a chance to join the spacetime sacred land." The eyes of all the Supreme Beings present lit up when they heard this. Who didn't want to join the 5 sacred lands? As long as one became a member of the sacred lands, regardless of status or identity, they would be above all the other races. In the future, they would be able to do as they pleased in the vast 1,000 domains. These words stirred the hearts of countless Supreme Beings. Even the Supreme Beings who had originally planned to stay out of the matter and watch with folded arms felt a hint of hostility when they saw Su Zimo and Dai Yu. Careful. Su Zimo looked at Dai Yu and warned her. Then he moved and charged at Supreme Being Wuxia. There were too many Supreme Beings around. No matter how strong Su Zimo was, he could not kill everyone. Only by killing a member of the sacred lands would he be able to intimidate the Supreme Beings of the other races. Kill him. The surrounding Supreme Beings reacted, controlling their great Daos and releasing their Tao weapons. Su Zimo's blood energy surged as 3 lotus flowers appeared behind him, transforming into 3 heads and 6 arms. Each of them held a jade scepter, the Tai horsetail whisk, the living soil of the 9 heavens, the karmic fire lotus platform. Wielding the Avici and Netherworld swords, he charged into the crowd. As soon as the 2 sides clashed, Su Zimo erupted with all his strength, holding nothing back. He knew that Dai Yu was facing the same situation as well. The only way he could have a chance of resolving today's situation was to release his full strength right away and kill the Supreme Beings of the other races with thunderous methods. 3 lotus flowers grew behind Su Zimo and surged into the skies, as though they were about to burst through the world. Each lotus flower corresponded to one of Su Zimo's heads and arms. In front of the Supreme Beings of the other races, Qinglian's bloodline had already displayed its might. The bloodlines of the Supreme Beings of the various races were clearly suppressed against Su Zimo, and some of them could not even release their bloodline phenomenons. Poof, poof, poof. Su Zimo charged into the crowd and relied solely on the power of his blood qi and the sharpness of the Avici and Netherworld swords to kill. Everywhere he passed, a blood mist would spread and corpses would be left behind. The Avici sword was the sharpest, and any Tao weapon that collided with it would shatter instantly. If it landed on the Supreme Beings of the other races, the Avici hell would appear and drag their essence spirits into it with a sinister aura. The Netherworld sword was the #1 killer. As long as it left a single wound on the Supreme Beings of the other races, even if it was just a superficial wound, it was enough to claim their lives. End of chapter. Chapter 33-31. Wherever the 3-headed and 6-armed Su Zimo passed, broken limbs flew everywhere. It was as if he had entered a no-man's land. He cut the Supremes into pieces and charged out a bloody path. The Supremes of the myriad races, no one could block Su Zimo's sword. Many Supremes were willing to gather under the 5 great sacred grounds mainly to protect themselves. But now, the Supremes of the myriad races saw that they would lose their lives against Su Zimo. Who would be stupid enough to rush forward and die? Although the opportunity to join the sacred grounds was precious, one had to be alive. Su Zimo held the Avicii and Netherworld swords in his hands and started a massacre, causing a rain of blood. It had indeed caused a huge impact and shock to the Supremes of the myriad races. In just a dozen breaths of time, the number of sovereign stage experts blocking his path had already thinned out. Most of the Supremes avoided him. This scene looked extremely strange. It was clearly an army of 300,000 Supremes, but they were forcefully dispersed by a figure. In the eyes of the living beings from all over the world, this scene was even more shocking. Dozens of Supremes gathered together like a torrent of steel, but they were forcefully cut off by someone. Supreme Wuxia and the other experts of the 5 great sacred grounds did not take Su Zimo seriously at all. Back then Su Zimo only dared to hide in the chaos sacred ground, relying on that chaos array to fight the enemy. In their opinion, even if Su Zimo had stepped into the Tao-controlling realm, he was still 2 realms away from them. Moreover, they still had hundreds of thousands of Supremes under their command, with a single order. Even if it was a battle of attrition, they could still exhaust him to death. But Supreme Wuxia and the others had still underestimated Su Zimo, underestimated the terror of the Avicii and Netherworld swords. Wherever the sword passed, it was invincible. Su Zimo followed the sword, he tore through the crowd and drove straight in not long after. He had already arrived in front of Supreme Wuxia and the others. It came too quickly. When Supreme Wuxia and the others realized that something was wrong, they had already met Su Zimo. The Supremes of the sacred grounds did not dare to be careless. They all released their chi and blood to control the great Tao. They took out their Tao weapons. They attacked Su Zimo from all sides. As members of the Holy Land, they had no choice but to accept. Naturally, he would not retreat so easily. Furthermore, the Supreme being experts of the 5 great Holy Lands. In total, there were thousands of them. There were no forces involved to be able to contend against it. Not to mention Su Zimo, who was alone. Facing the siege of so many sovereigns of the Holy Land, Qin Wendian had no choice but to take action. Su Zimo did not stop walking. The aura in his body rose once again and his strength soared. His eyes were like torches as he shouted, "You want my life? You guys are still far from it." Su Zimo also controlled the Chaos Great Tao. Strands of Chaos Chi surrounded his body and attached themselves to the Avicii and Netherworld swords. The 3-headed and 6-armed Su Zimo. Once again he charged into the crowd. Against the supreme experts of other races, Su Zimo did not even release the Great Tao of Chaos. If it weren't for the fact that there were too many supreme martial artists, he was only relying on his body and bloodline that had fused with the 3 lotuses. It was enough to sweep through them. Now, against the various Holy Land Supremes, Su Zimo released the Great Tao of Chaos and unleashed his strength to the extreme. Clang clang clang. Puff puff puff. The Tao weapons of the various Holy Land Supremes. They could not block the sharpness of the Avicii and Netherworld swords. No matter what divine weapon it was, when it collided with it, it would either break directly or shatter into pieces. The Great Tao controlled by the various supreme experts was also forcefully cut off by Su Zimo's 2 swords. When he was at the perfected Tao comprehension realm, if he wanted to break through the supreme expert's Great Tao, Su Zimo had to use the spirit potency art to summon Wu Dao's true body to find the flaws and weaknesses of the other party's Great Tao. After stepping into the Tao manipulation realm, Su Zimo relied on his own strength. He could use the Avicii and Netherworld swords to cut off the other party's Great Tao. Blood filled the air. It dyed the sky red. Even the Supremes of the sacred grounds could not defend against Su Zimo's attacks. Su Zimo charged forward as if he was cutting melons and vegetables. The various Holy Land Supremes were completely defeated. They wailed like ghosts and howled like wolves. Supreme Wuxia had also become the soul of Su Zimo's swordsman. Although there were many Supremes, when they saw this scene, their faces were filled with shock. Their faces were pale, and a chill rose from the bottom of their hearts. How could they dare to rashly step forward? Even the lives of the supreme experts of the 5 Holy Lands were like grass under Su Zimo's sword. Even if they swarmed forward, it would probably not be enough. In fact, if these more than 300,000 supreme experts were really fearless of death and constantly besieged, Su Zimo would not be able to hold on. After all, he was only at the initial stage of the Tao manipulation realm. No matter how strong Qinglian's body was, her strength was not endless. There was no end. Unfortunately, the supremes of the 10,000 races were completely stunned by Su Zimo's killing methods just now. At this moment, all the supreme experts were praying that Su Zimo would not find them. Who would dare to rashly challenge Su Zimo? Isn't this too strong? As expected of the Master of Chaos, so powerful. When the human supremes saw this scene, their faces were filled with shock and their mouths agape. They were already shocked when Daiyu rushed over and joined the battlefield. She controlled the great Tao of wind and fought against the supreme experts of the four directions. However, the man named Su Zimo had single-handedly slaughtered his way through an army of 300,000 supreme martial artists. The supreme beings of the 5 great holy lands had all been beaten by him until they threw away their helmets and armor, suffering a crushing defeat. In the end, no one dared to step forward. A large bloody zone was formed around Su Zimo. Other than him standing with his sword, everyone else was dead on the spot. Under the Avicii and Netherworld swords, there were no casualties, only dead souls. On the other side, Su Zimo was invincible and killed his way through the 5 holy lands, reducing the pressure on Daiyu, the fishermen and the other supremes of the human race. The supreme beings of the various races who were initially besieging them could not help but think about it. This blood-robed woman came hand in hand with the Master of Chaos. If they hurt her, wouldn't the Master of Chaos want their lives? The attacks of the supreme being experts also gradually became restrained, as they were afraid of hurting Daiyu. Their attacks gradually weakened. "This Tao companion of yours is truly ferocious," the chef panted and could not help but praise with a hearty laugh. "When we return to the village, I'll cook a table full of delicious dishes for you guys." Near Shenmi Mountain. Many of the human cultivators were elated at the sight of this. The supreme beings of the 10,000 races gathered together with a terrifying aura that suppressed them to the point of suffocation. Despair was the only thing left in their hearts when they saw that hundreds of human supreme beings were about to be wiped out. To think that the situation would be reversed the moment a man and woman entered the forbidden zone of time and space. Saints Jiang Chao and Hui Ming heaved a sigh of relief as well. The guilt in their hearts lessened when they saw that hundreds of human supreme beings could be saved. Those 2 fellow Taoists are unfamiliar and weren't famous previously. To think that they would possess such frightening combat strength. It's truly the fortune of the human race. He's the Master of Chaos and the plant race. What does he have to do with the human race? How is he unrelated? He's a Tao companion of the human race and is on our side. Furthermore, I have a feeling that I've seen those 2 somewhere before. They seem especially familiar. To be honest, I find them familiar as well. Who knows, I might have met them once before. Stop flattering yourselves. A series of laughter came from the crowd and everyone's initially tense nerves gradually relaxed. Lin Xuanji was the only one who murmured softly, "It's normal to be familiar." Chapter 33-32. The Spacetime Forbidden Land was in chaos. The hundreds of thousands of supremes who had gathered under the 5 sacred grounds were also scattered by Su Zimo's charge as they hurriedly made way for him. The 5 holy lands also suffered a lot of casualties. Su Zimo knew in his heart that he could not stay here for long. Seeing this situation, the supremes of the 5 holy lands would definitely not stand by and watch. Of course, if only 1 or 2 supremes intervened, it would not be a big threat to him. Su Zimo was only worried that the situation would go out of control and cause an even bigger disaster. "Let's go." Su Zimo did not continue to chase after the supremes of the 5 holy lands. He turned around and came to Daiyu and the others. When the supremes who had besieged them saw Su Zimo return, they were frightened and did not dare to stop him. They scattered. "Su Zimo, how dare you? You killed my holy land's people and still want to escape unscathed. Today all of you will be buried here with us." A fierce shout suddenly sounded from the end of the sky. In the next moment, figures appeared from 5 directions in the spacetime forbidden land and were rushing towards this place. The supremes of the 5 holy lands had appeared. In addition to Heaven Fall, Qin Yong, 9 Shadows, and Wood Unicorn who he had met once in the Chaos Holy Land, there were 8 other supremes. The conditions to become a holy race were extremely harsh. The holy race was rare. 12 supremes of the holy race descended at the same time. It was a rare scene. These 12 supremes of the holy race. Each of them was once an invincible supremes who had ruled for at least 100 million years under the Saint Realm. However, because of the great Tao they cultivated, there had long been saints occupying it. They had not been able to become saints all these years. "Master." Seeing these supremes of the holy race appear, the supremes of the 5 holy lands seemed to have seen their saviors. They all crowded towards the 12 supremes of the holy race. It's the Heaven Fall Saint. The Kuanpeng bloodline. The Wood Unicorn Saint. It is said that this is an extremely rare wood unicorn. He cultivates the great Tao of life. No matter how serious the injury, he can recover. The Saintess of Azure Sky is also here. Heavens, these are the supremes of the holy race back then. If the saints don't come out, it's these experts who patrol the myriad races and punish them on behalf of the heavens. In the great thousand worlds, if the saints did not appear, the sacred race's supremes were almost the most powerful existences. These sacred race autarchs had all sorts of reasons. He couldn't step into the saint realm, but to the myriad races, he was also a powerful existence that couldn't be blasphemed against. The living beings of the myriad races would usually address them as holy sons. The saintess was a sign of respect. Besides the war between the 5 holy lands and the 4 Daos in the 33 heavens, this had never happened before. Everyone heed my command. The Skyfall Holy Sun looked around and said in a deep voice, "Leave this Su Zimo to us. The rest of you, go all out and kill those human supremes. Don't leave a single one alive." The Skyfall Sage wasn't just speaking to the people of the sacred land. It was also an order to the supremes of the myriad races scattered around. As a matter of fact, the bloody battle that had just taken place was a bloody one. The autarchs of the various races were already terrified of Su Zimo. But now the 12 saints and saintesses had arrived. They didn't dare to disobey such an order. Moreover, as long as the 12 saints and saintesses suppressed Su Zimo, however, the hundreds of human supremes were nothing to be afraid of. Kill. Almost at the moment the Skyfall Sage gave the order, Su Zimo also let out a long roar. In the state of 3 heads and 6 arms, he controlled the Avicii and Netherworld swords. He charged toward the 12 saints and saintesses. As long as these 12 people were killed, the rest would collapse without a fight. The Skyfall Sage faced Su Zimo, who was charging toward him. Their expressions were solemn and they didn't show the slightest bit of contempt. They had just been in the various sacred lands. They had witnessed the terror of the Avicii and Netherworld swords with their own eyes. This time they had come. Naturally, they were already prepared. Go! The Skyfall Sage took out a ray of blood light. He threw it into the air and turned it into a blood-colored banner, filled with a faint smell of blood. At the same time, the 12 saints and saintesses bit the tip of their tongues at the same time and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. They sprinkled it on the banner and injected it into their souls. In the next moment, the 12 saints and saintesses established a connection with the blood banner at the same time. They felt a strange, bloody and incomparably powerful power in this blood banner. The 12 saints and saintesses controlled this blood banner at the same time, constantly swaying in front of Su Zimo. In an instant, blood energy surged. It was as if a blood river had appeared between heaven and earth, surging towards Su Zimo, wanting to swallow him. Su Zimo felt a strong sense of danger. The power contained in this blood river, it was definitely not something he could resist. It was also impossible for a Tao manipulation realm expert to control it. This power probably came from the Saint realm. Su Zimo hurriedly stopped his body, holding the 2 swords in front of him, and retreated at the same time. However, the blood river kept roaring, and its speed was even faster. In an instant, it approached Su Zimo, wanting to swallow him. The surging river had already swallowed the Avicii and Netherworld swords. These 2 divine swords had never been suppressed since they fell into Su Zimo's hands. However, at this moment, in the face of this blood river, the sharp murderous aura of the Avicii and Netherworld swords seemed to have faded a little, and the trembling swords also calmed down. A powerful devouring force burst forth from the blood river, wanting to swallow Su Zimo and the Avicii and Netherworld swords together. Su Zimo could not resist it, and could only let go of his hand, allowing the blood river to swallow the Avicii and Netherworld swords. However, after swallowing the 2 swords, the blood river also reverted to its original form, returning to the appearance of a blood banner floating in midair. No matter how the 12 saints and saintesses tried to control it, this blood banner did not move at all. Swallowing the Avicii and Netherworld swords had also consumed a lot of the blood banner's energy. It could not be distracted at the moment, and seemed to be trying to suppress the Avicii and Netherworld swords. The 12 saints and saintesses looked at each other and heaved a sigh of relief. To them, the biggest threat was the Avicii and Netherworld swords. As long as they could control these 2 divine swords, only Su Zimo was left, and there was nothing to be afraid of. Near Xianmi Mountain. Seeing this scene, everyone became nervous again. It actually alarmed the 12 saints and saintesses. What kind of treasure is that blood banner? How can it be so powerful that it requires the 12 saints and saintesses to activate it at the same time? It seems that these saints and saintesses are also very wary of those two swords. While everyone was discussing, Saint Jiangchao and Saint Huiming stared at the blood banner, frowning. The two saints seemed to have thought of something, but they were not sure. They turned to the mountain elder and could not help but ask, "Mountain elder, that blood banner seems to be, that's the saint blood banner?" The mountain elder still had a bitter expression. The soul-summoning saint artifact was borrowed by these juniors. Hearing this, everyone was shocked and angry. What is this? A saint intervened in a conflict between Tao manipulation realm cultivators. How shameless are the 5 sacred grounds. Although they did not directly attack, it can be considered as an indirect intervention. It's not like we humans don't have saints. Many cultivators subconsciously looked at the two saints Jiangchao and Huiming. The two saints looked troubled as they shook their heads and sighed. They had just become saints, and their natal spiritual treasures had not merged with the great Tao to be forged into saint artifacts. Moreover, even if they were forged into saint artifacts and lent to Su Zimo, it would be difficult for him to unleash the power of the saint artifacts. And the two of them could not directly descend and intervene just because of a saint artifact. That would only give others an advantage and cause more trouble. End of chapter. Chapter 33-33. The appearance of the 12 saints and saintesses and the saint blood banner to suppress the Avicii and Netherworld swords was a great relief for the Supremes. They had just witnessed the terror of the Avicii and Netherworld swords. If Su Zimo still had these two swords in his hands, who would dare to step forward? Now, under the command of the 12 saints and saintesses, the Supremes who had just been scattered all over the place gathered here again. Su Zimo looked solemn. He had already lost his perception of the Avicii and Netherworld swords. This was something that had never happened before. From this, one could infer the power of the blood banner. And without the Avicii and Netherworld swords, his combat strength would be greatly reduced. It was almost impossible for him to fight against the Supremes by himself. Moreover, the 12 saints and saintesses were eyeing him covetously. Under the command of the heaven-falling Holy Sun and the others, the Supremes of the various clans gathered together and charged towards the human clan Supremes like an apocalyptic torrent. The 12 saints and saintesses also surrounded Su Zimo and attacked at the same time. Seeing this scene, many Supreme Being experts were secretly speechless. Since ancient times, there had never been a prime martial artist who had been besieged by 12 saints and saintesses. Moreover, this master of chaos was not a Supremes, but a Tao master at the initial Tao manipulation realm. The saints and saintesses, no matter who they were, had once stood tall in the long river of time and were invincible among their peers. They were supreme existences. And now the 12 saints and saintesses had joined forces. How terrifying this scene was. The 12 great Taos manifested in the hands of the saints and saintesses, transforming into countless divine weapons and attacking Su Zimo. Even without the Avicii and Netherworld swords, Su Zimo was not afraid at all. At this moment he had merged the creation, hellfire, and merit lotuses. Even without the Avicii and Netherworld swords, his combat strength was not weaker than any Supremes. The 3 lotuses that connected heaven and earth flickered with different splendor and swayed gently. The chaotic light spread out, evolving into layers of ripples that rippled in all directions. Su Zimo, in the state of 3 heads and 6 arms, exerted his combat strength to the extreme and broke out in a fierce battle with the 12 saints and saintesses. Boom, boom, boom. Their vital blood, grand Taos, bodies and numinous treasures collided ceaselessly in midair, causing a wave of deafening bangs to resound. At this level of cultivation, there were no longer any complicated or profound divine abilities or forbidden arts, nor were there any fancy moves. Every movement was a struggle for the great Tao. The 12 saints' sons and saintesses were secretly frightened. They originally thought that as long as they suppressed the Avicii and Netherworld swords, they would be able to easily kill Su Zimo with their combined strength. But in the face of their siege, Su Zimo did not show any signs of defeat. Instead, the more he fought, the braver he became. He dared not imagine how terrifying this person's combat strength would be if he had the Avicii and Netherworld twin swords in his hands. Perhaps the 12 holy sons and holy daughters would all die here. The atavistic bloodline flowed in their bodies. Even so, he could not suppress Su Zimo's vitality. Of course, the 12 saints and saintesses were joining forces after all. It would be extremely difficult for Su Zimo to break free and reverse the situation. The current battle situation was still firmly in their hands. Moreover, on the other side of the battlefield, the group of human supremes would not be able to hold on for long. Su Zimo obviously noticed this as well. His attacks did not stop, but his expression became colder and colder, and his eyes flickered with a trace of coldness. Su Zimo, surrender. It's meaningless to continue fighting. You can't escape death. You're alone against the sacred race. No one among the thousands of races will dare to help you. The 12 holy sons and saintesses were still pressuring Su Zimo. Fight. At this moment, a furious roar sounded between heaven and earth. It was as deafening as a sudden clap of thunder. Boom. In the next moment, a thick and long staff descended from the sky. It was suffused with golden light and smashed into the crowd, causing the earth to shake and mountains to shake. Some supremes could not dodge in time and were smashed to death by the staff, turning into a pool of flesh and blood. When Gu Qing heard this familiar voice, Su Zimo's eyes shone brightly, and his spirits were lifted. Monkey was here. Who said that no one among the thousands of races would dare to help him? A tall figure stood at the top of the long staff. His body was covered in long hair, his arms were extremely long and he had 6 ears. His eyes were bloodshot and his aura was torrential. With an arrogant expression, he stared at the battlefield below and shouted, "I'm going to help him." The 12 holy sons and saintesses frowned when their gazes landed on Monkey. Was him? The shrewd monkey of the Chaos Fiend ape race. The 12 holy sons and saintesses had heard of this monkey. The Chaos Fiend ape was a unique existence among the thousands of races. Originally, only one was born in this world. And this Chaos Fiend ape was known as the Great Sage of Chaos. Tens of thousands of years ago, it was said that a second Chaos Fiend ape ascended in the middle world and was received by the Great Sage of Chaos. The Great Sage of Chaos was unruly and had always been a lone wolf. Even the sages of the 5 sacred grounds were respectful towards him. The Great Sage of Chaos had obtained an inheritor who could awaken his bloodline. One could imagine how much he valued this inheritor. The 5 sacred grounds had heard that this inheritor was known as the demonic battle ape, but they had never seen him before. Now it was their first time meeting him. The 12 holy sons and saintesses were not afraid of this demonic battle ape. It was just that if they really killed this demonic battle ape, the Great Sage of Chaos behind him would be alarmed. Over the countless years, the chaotic world demonic ape clan only had a total of 2. If this demonic battle ape died in their hands, the other would definitely go crazy. If the Great Sage of Chaos went crazy, only the sacred leaders could suppress him. Supremacy battle, I don't want to be enemies with you. The Sky Rising Saint said in a low voice, "For my sake, don't interfere in today's matter. Your face is nothing." The monkey had a disdainful expression as he spat. You think you can rely on your numbers to call yourselves holy sons and saintesses? A bunch of shameless things. These words were extremely unpleasant. The expressions of the 12 holy sons and saintesses darkened instantly. As supremacies of the sacred race, they had once reigned supreme throughout history and were invincible below the saint realm. When had they ever suffered such humiliation? Supremacy battle. Qing Yong narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "We're just unwilling to fight with you. It's not that we're afraid of you. Don't be ignorant. I'll give you a piece of advice. Don't meddle in other people's business." 9 shadows let out an ear-piercing cry of an infant. Ha 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 ha. Monkey grinned and leaped down from the rod, scolding, "Who do you think you are to give me advice?" Monkey looked at Su Zimo in the crowd. The man and monkey exchanged glances and could see the joy in the other party's eyes. From Tsanglang Mountain Range to Tianhuang Mainland, from the middle world to the greater world, the 2 brothers had braved through life and death. There was no need for words between them, they were already mentally connected. Monkey's eyes seemed to turn even redder as he shouted, "Boss, let's fight side by side today and kill to our heart's content." "Alright." Su Zimo shouted as well. "Let's fight to our heart's content today as brothers." In a daze, the 2 of them seemed to have returned to Tsanglang Mountain Range and recalled the days when they fought side by side. The world had changed and the world had changed. The only thing that did not change was their initial passion and sincerity that transcended race, life and death and everything else. Chapter 33-34. Su Zimo and Monkey reunited in the forbidden zone of time and space of the Supreme World. Back to back, they joined forces and fought against the 12 saints and saintesses. However, against Su Zimo alone, the 12 saints and saintesses could still suppress him. Now that Monkey had joined the fray, the man and Monkey began to counterattack and showed signs of breaking free from the encirclement. Monkey was brought to the supreme world by the great sage of chaos early on. Furthermore, it was the second chaos fiend ape in the world. It was obvious how highly the great sage of chaos valued it. The great sage of chaos spent almost all his effort to nurture Monkey. Although the saints of the various sacred grounds were rare, they would not receive guidance from the great sage and their resources were relatively scattered. However, the great sage of chaos only needed to guide Monkey. For countless years, the great sage of chaos's cultivation experience and all the treasures and resources accumulated were all piled up on Monkey. It was no exaggeration to say that Monkey's cultivation environment was even better than that of the saints of the various sacred grounds. Under such circumstances, Monkey's cultivation realm could advance by leaps and bounds and reach the perfected Tao manipulation realm. As a supreme, Monkey's combat strength was not weaker than the paragons of the various saints. The bloodline of the Chaos Fiend Ape was not disadvantaged at all against the bloodlines of the various saints. Of course, it was still far from enough for the man and Monkey to suppress the 12 saints and saintesses. Those who could be called saints and saintesses were all supreme paragons who dominated the ancient times. None of them were easy to deal with. As time passed by, the situation became increasingly disadvantageous for the human race. Su Zimo and Monkey could still hold on, but Dai Yu and the hundreds of human paragons could not defend against the attacks of the paragons of the 10,000 races. Ah! Su Zimo roared and his blood chi surged. Monkey and he were telepathic. The two of them worked together and burst forth with all their might, breaking through the encirclement of the 12 saints and saintesses. They charged into the crowd and gathered in the direction of Dai Yu and the others. Poof! Poof! Apart from the 12 saints and saintesses, none of the supreme experts in midair were a match for Su Zimo and Monkey. Everywhere they passed, corpses were strewn everywhere. The man and Monkey's auras were like rainbows. They were like two sharp swords as they tore through the crowd of supreme beings of 10,000 races, tearing through mountains of corpses and seas of blood, arriving near the stone of life. The 12 holy sons and holy daughters followed closely behind, chasing after him like shadows. It was impossible for Su Zimo and the Monkey to come out unscathed. There were wounds all over their bodies, dripping with blood. The two of them seemed to be completely unaware of it. Su Zimo circulated his bloodline as his wounds healed rapidly. The wounds on Monkey's body petrified rapidly as well. After seeing blood, the sanguine glint in his eyes intensified and his aura turned even more violent. The supremes of all races were gathered under the command of the 12 saints and saintesses. There were too many of them. Hundreds of supreme being experts had died in their hands during the earlier battle. However, compared to the hundreds of thousands of supreme beings, it was almost negligible. As long as the 12 holy sons and holy daughters didn't die, the supremes of the myriad races wouldn't retreat under their call. Without the Avicii and Netherworld swords, Su Zimo was unable to kill the 12 holy sons and saintesses. Unless he summoned the spirit potency art and summoned Wu Dao's true body. However, if he did that, his identity as Araki Takashi would be exposed and it would cause even more chaos. Bang! 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 Under the command of the 12 holy sons and saintesses, the supremes of the myriad races controlled their great Daos and condensed countless Dao soldiers that descended from the skies like rain. Under such circumstances, Su Zimo was the only one who could protect himself with the 9 heavens breath soil and many other treasures. Even Monkey and Dai Yu could not withstand it, let alone the other supreme beings of the human race. More and more human supreme beings were severely injured and lost their combat strength. Rise! Gui shouted. Su Zimo bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a stream of essence blood onto the Merit Lotus platform before tossing it out. The Merit Lotus platform rose rapidly and hovered above the heads of the human supreme beings. It spun slowly and bloomed with a brilliant golden light. The Merit Golden Lotus was indestructible and was an extreme defensive treasure. The higher one's merit, the greater the defense of the Merit Lotus platform. As for Su Zimo, he had once taught martial arts to all living beings, quelled the chaos of the primordial races and suppressed the blood fiend calamity. In the middle world, he had even led the living beings of the myriad races to crush the heavenly courts in the 9 heavens. Every single thing he did was accumulating unparalleled merit. That was the reason why the Merit Golden Lotus was able to temporarily block the attacks of the supreme beings of the myriad races and give the human supreme beings a chance to catch their breaths. However, the attacks of the supreme beings of the myriad races did not stop and the merit was being depleted continuously. As time passed by, the merit golden lotus swayed continuously from the attacks and its golden light flickered, as though it could fall at any moment. Brother Su, leave. Don't bother about us. The woodcutter wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and panted. That's right. If you continue like this, you'll die here as well. If you leave this place and survive, the human race will have a future. Many supreme beings of the human race spoke as well. They were severely injured and could not get up from the ground. It was impossible for them to escape death. However, they did not want to implicate Su Zimo and the others. Su Zimo's expression darkened and he did not say anything. The 3 lotus flowers swayed and shone brightly. His 6 arms supported the merit golden lotus and his veins popped as he defended against the attacks of the supreme beings of the myriad races. The power in his body was already pushed to its limits. Bang, bang, bang. The attacks of the supreme beings of the myriad races were endless. Although the merit golden lotus neutralized a lot of damage, there was still endless power that passed through the merit golden lotus and into Su Zimo's 6 arms. With each impact, Su Zimo's body would tremble. A trace of blood seeped out from the corner of his lips as well. Roar. Monkey pounded his chest and stomped his feet. He raised the rod in his hands vertically and pressed it beneath the merit golden lotus, wanting to help Su Zimo support it. However, under that suffocating pressure, his long staff was also bending bit by bit, emitting a series of horrifying cracking sounds. The moment Monkey's hands touched the rod, he felt the terrifying power and the flesh on his arms exploded instantly, sending him flying in a bloody mess. The merit golden lotus was like the sky above everyone's heads that was still sinking bit by bit. Dai Yu and the other supreme beings of the human race who still had combat strength rushed forward one after another. They controlled their great daos and supported their arms, wanting to help Su Zimo support it. However, as soon as the crowd's hands touched the virtuous golden lotus, they felt a surging power coming from above. The power was way too massive, like the vast starry skies or the vast ocean. They were like small boats in the raging sea that would be engulfed by the waves in the blink of an eye. Poof. In less than a single breath, the supreme beings of the human race could not hold on any longer. As though they were struck by lightning, they spat out mouthfuls of blood and collapsed to the ground limply. Everyone looked at Su Zimo in shock. It was only at this moment that they realized what sort of pressure and impact Su Zimo was enduring right now. That man was resisting the power and wills of the supreme beings of the myriad races single-handedly. That body looked so frail and weak. However, his spine was straight and his feet were spread apart, rooted in the ground like a towering human character. It was majestic and held up the swaying sky, for them. Chapter 33-35. It was not only the supremes of the human race. Even the supremes of the myriad races who attacked could not conceal their shock when they saw this scene. The 12 saints and saintesses looked down at the scene with cold expressions. They knew that Su Zimo could not win at all. The Saint of Heaven Rising Saint raised his voice. Su Zimo, you truly don't know what's good for you to fight against the supremes of the myriad races single-handedly. Can you withstand the will of the myriad races? Qing Yong hollered as well. The attacks of the supremes of the myriad races became increasingly ferocious. As for the merit on the merit golden lotus, it was gradually depleted and was sinking slowly. This power was way too strong. As the saints said, the merit golden lotus carried the power of the myriad races and the will of the myriad races. How could it be withstood by a single person? Su Zimo was still in the posture of holding up the merit golden lotus. However, his 6 arms were bending continuously. The bottom of the virtuous golden lotus was almost touching the top of his head. A tremendous pressure transmitted over and Su Zimo's face flushed red. The veins on his neck popped and the sleeves on his arms had long been torn. Even he had no choice but to lower his head. The merit golden lotus landed slowly on his back. Su Zimo shuddered and swayed slightly as he spat out a mouthful of blood. However, he did not let go. Although he lowered his head, his spine was still straight. Monkey's rod was bent into an exaggerated arc from the pressure, as though it could snap at any moment. Brother Su, hurry and escape. Don't bother about us. As long as you're alive, there's hope for the human race. The fisherman, woodcutter and the others said loudly. Those words sounded strange to the supremes of the human race. Su Zimo was clearly the master of chaos. Why would there be hope for the human race if he survived? However, no one was in the mood to think about that under such circumstances. Su Zimo remained silent and his expression was frighteningly dark. Behind him were hundreds of supremes of the human race. If he retreated, The hundreds of supremes of the human race would be instantly drowned by the attacks of the supremes of the 10,000 races and be reduced to dust. Monkey grimaced in pain as he stood up. The bloody light in his eyes had dimmed significantly as he limped to Su Zimo's side. Even if they were to die, they would die together. Dai Yu's face was pale as she came to Su Zimo's side with a determined look in her eyes. Even now, she had never regretted coming to the forbidden area of time and space. Hundreds of human race supremes supported each other and struggled to stand up. Facing the supremes of all races, they stood with their heads held high, fearless in the face of death. Near Xianmi Mountain, hundreds of millions of humans had gathered here, stretching as far as the eye could see, looking up at this scene in the forbidden zone of spacetime. Some of them were filled with grief and indignation. Some of them had tears in their eyes. There were also some who didn't dare to look anymore. They lowered their heads and wept softly. Anger, despair, moved, sorrow, powerlessness, all sorts of emotions reverberated in the air above Xianmi Mountain, pressing down on the humans to the point that they were almost unable to breathe. At this moment, the figure that fought against the 10,000 races seemed so tragic and stirring. Is there anyone else who can help him? Haitang's face was filled with tears and her voice trembled with a hint of sobbing. Saints, are you guys just going to watch Su Zimo and the other human race supremes die? Saints, aren't you supposed to protect the human race? Many human cultivators looked at the two saints of the human race, Jiang Chao and Hui Ming, with a hint of pleading and hope in their eyes. The two saints, Jiang Chao and Hui Ming, lowered their heads in silence with guilty expressions. They were also extremely upset and pained in their hearts. Of course they could not bear to do so. However, the two of them did not dare to break the balance and interfere in this matter. Even they themselves did not know if they were afraid that the 5 sacred grounds would vent their anger on the human race or if they were afraid that they would be implicated and be stripped of their positions as saints. Mountain Elder, think of something. Many humans looked at the white-haired old man again. The Mountain Elder's expression was even more miserable as he gripped the tattered book tightly. His hands trembled slightly but he did not say a word. If the great Emperor Araki Takashi of the human race is not dead, he will definitely ascend to the great Kiliakosm and definitely not allow the human race to be bullied by the 10,000 races. A human clenched his fists and suddenly said. Over the years, Lin Xuanji had been traveling and telling stories everywhere. The legends of the Araki Takashi establishing the Tao and the various great emperors conquering the 9 heavens had long spread everywhere. Most of the humans present had heard of it. The last time the great Emperor Araki Takashi and the great Emperor Shui Dai joined forces to conquer the heavens was even more memorable. Of course, the final outcome of the great Emperor Araki Takashi was also a pity. At this moment, when they saw the human race supremes being suppressed and bullied by the 10,000 races and facing a life-and-death crisis, everyone could not help but recall the legend of the great Emperor Araki Takashi. Many of the human cultivators present were in the martial monarch realm or above. However, everyone had great respect for the great Emperor Araki Takashi as well. The fact that the Araki Takashi established his Tao and imparted martial arts to all living beings was enough to earn the respect of many human experts. Furthermore, there was the conquering of the 9 heavens and the destruction of the heavenly courts, breaking the seal that the various sacred grounds had on the middle world for countless years. Even they did not dare to go against the sacred grounds. In the hearts of the humans, the great Emperor Araki Takashi was a symbol of courage to fight against all injustice. That was the reason why someone blurted out that if the great Emperor Araki Takashi was still around, he would definitely not allow the human race to be bullied. Lin Xuanji opened his mouth slightly and hesitated. In order to protect Su Zimo when he was telling the story, he naturally did not reveal that the great Emperor Araki Takashi was Su Zimo. Earlier on, he suddenly had the urge to tell everyone present about this. The great Emperor Araki Takashi was around the entire time. It was the great Emperor Araki Takashi who was resisting the power and will of the 10,000 races single-handedly. However, what was the use of that? Right then, something seemed to have happened in the battlefield of the forbidden spacetime grounds. Right in front of countless gazes, the swaying figure that supported the merit golden lotus suddenly stopped swaying. Su Zimo raised his head abruptly. 2 balls of bright and scorching purple flames were burning in his originally deep eyes. The 2 balls of purple flames were blinding. Even the 12 holy princes and saintesses felt their hearts skip a beat when they exchanged glances. In their senses, Su Zimo's aura was changing. It was as though he was a completely different person. He had turned into a terrifying existence that struck fear in their hearts. Roar! Suddenly, Su Zimo opened his mouth and let out a deafening roar that reverberated through the world. The next moment, a gigantic heaven and earth furnace appeared around him with raging flames that engulfed almost all the paragons of the 10,000 races. Of course, that was not the true heaven and earth furnace. After all, Wu Dao's true body could not truly descend with the help of the spirit potency art. However, at that moment, with the help of the spirit potency art, the two true bodies were connected mentally. Wu Dao's true body used the incomparably powerful and unshakable will of Wu Dao to conjure the terrifying image of the heaven and earth furnace that shocked all living beings. For the first time, Wu Dao's will descended into the greater world. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.